Chapter 279. Bartending. Hearing Du Ming's words, Du Sikong immediately laughed and said, "Stinking brat, scram to the side, don't talk nonsense here." Du Ming retorted, "I'm not talking nonsense, what I want to learn from teacher is bartending." This time, even Du Exhilarating was dumbfounded. "Brother, you can't be, you want to learn bartending from him? Are you kidding me? Dad is the president of the Bartenders Guild, the only god of wine bartender in this generation." Du Ming snorted and said, "My bartending philosophy and father's are different. Dad, do you really think that teacher's appearance is a coincidence? Have you ever thought about why teacher suddenly appeared in our guild, why he came to Tianshui City? Teacher's purpose is to come to our Bartenders Guild to learn from you." Du Sikong looked at Hyoheim in shock and said, "Mr. Ji Dong." Du Ming said. Ji Dong nodded and said, "What he said is true. This time, I came to the Bartenders Guild to learn from you about bartending. Who would have thought that as soon as I arrived in Tianshui City, I would hear that the Bartenders Guild was in trouble, so I came to take a look, and just happened to see you chasing Du Ming out." Du Ming continued, "Teacher's bartending skills completely convinced me, so I took him as my teacher. At that time, I had no idea that teacher was such a powerful magician. If the person Du Ming took as his teacher was someone else, Du Sikong would have long been furious. As the president of the Bartenders Guild, with the title of God of Wine, his own son had to learn bartending from someone else. How could he accept this? However, the person his son took as his teacher had just saved the entire Bartenders Guild, and also saved him. Looking at Ji Dong, Du Sikong's face alternated between red and white, and he was speechless. Ji Dong replied, "President Du, you don't need to be too surprised. In fact, I just wanted to compare notes with you. Du Ming's bartending philosophy is very similar to mine. We both pursue the technique of bartending itself rather than the fusion of mana. I heard from my senior brother that you have already reached an unsurpassable peak in your bartending skills and mana fusion. Therefore, I came here this time in hopes that I can learn something from you. We can also exchange some pointers. It should be beneficial for the future development of bartending." Hearing Ji Dong's words, Du Exhilarating couldn't help but say, "Big brother Ji Dong, how old are you? As a magician, it's already very shocking that you have such powerful strength, but bartending is different. Without years of wholehearted immersion, it's impossible to have any achievements. My father has been bartending for 50 years, and with his extraordinary talent, he has achieved what he has today. I do admire your cultivation as a magician, but when you say that you can learn from my father in bartending, it's really unbelievable." Du Sikong didn't say anything, nor did he scold his daughter this time. He really admired Ji Dong's cultivation as a magician, but when it came to the field of bartending, as the number one in this field for many years, he always had a sense of superiority when facing any bartender. It was really hard for him to believe that Ji Dong could compete with him in this field. Du Ming glared at his sister and said, "Exhilarating, what does a little girl like you know? Teacher's attainments in bartending are not inferior to his cultivation as a magician, maybe even higher. Don't forget, your son is also a 6-star bartender. But after seeing teacher's skills, I don't even have the courage to mix cocktails in front of him. Teacher has shown me the most exquisite and magical skills of a bartender. With just his skills, he can make the same cocktail have hundreds of different flavors, reaching the realm of having hundreds of flavors. In our world of bartending, even the president of the Fury branch can't do it. Only you can do it, but chromium also needs to be used in combination with magic, but teacher didn't use any magic at all." Du Ming glared at his sister and said, "Exhilarating, what does a little girl like you know? Teacher's skills in bartending are no weaker than his magic, maybe even higher. Dad, don't forget, your son is also a 6-star bartender. But after seeing teacher's skills, I don't even have the courage to bartend in front of him." Du Sikong watched as Hyoheim moved. When his son said that Hyoheim wanted to learn bartending, the first thing he thought of was that Ji Dong was also here for the vast sea fine jade nectar. However, he quickly rejected this thought because if Ji Dong was here for the vast sea fine jade nectar, he could have taken it away from him after saving him that day. However, Ji Dong didn't do that. He simply resolved the crisis of the guild, and even defeated the demonic alliance. Did he really need to do that if he wanted to snatch the vast sea fine jade nectar? Moreover, he had the support of the entire magician guild. As for what his son said about Ji Dong being able to complete a pure skill mixing with wine and 100 flavors, he was also skeptical. Mr. Ji Dong, how do you want to compete with me? Have you had a bartending competition with Fury? Du Sikong's mind was much calmer now. He brought his children here today to thank Ji Dong, but now his competitive spirit was aroused. Ji Dong said, I've competed with Senior Fury once. It was about 5 years ago. At that time we were on par. Speaking of which, I got to know Senior Fury because of bartending. When Senior Fury came to you to take the 9-star bartender exam, I had just arrived in Central Plains City. Because I had some conflicts with the local bartender branch, we had a competition and defeated them. After Senior Fury came back, he came to find me. After listening to Ji Dong's words, Du Sikong's eyes gradually changed. He believed that Ji Dong would never exaggerate. From the fact that he had such a powerful strength but was still so reserved, he could tell that he was not an arrogant person. Although Du Sikong had never thought that Ji Dong's bartending ability would surpass his, he knew that Ji Dong was indeed qualified to compete with him since he could be on par with Fury. Moreover, Ji Dong had the source of life that he desired very much. The top 10 wines on the famous wines record could not be measured by value. All right, Mr. Ji Dong, please choose a time and let's compete. Ji Dong said, if President Du has time, let's do it tomorrow. You can choose the place. However, I don't want too many spectators. How about my 2 partners and your children? I think a bartender of your level doesn't need to be judged. Du Sikong nodded and said, all right, we'll do as you say. I'll go arrange it. There's nothing else in the guild, but there are many places for bartenders to compete. We won't disturb your rest then. Ji Dong smiled and nodded. It was good to let Du Ming point it out. After the competition with Du Sikong, it was time for him and the flaming bar to leave. After he made an appointment with Miao Miao, the leader of the demonic alliance, he suddenly remembered something. Before the battle between the demonic alliance and the demonic alliance began, he had to go to a place to find a person. After that, he would have to cultivate for a period of time. Du Xian looked at Ji Dong, blinked her big eyes and said, Brother Ji Dong, you haven't agreed to take me as your disciple. Although we don't have the same magic system, we're both magicians. You can still give me pointers. How about I learn bartending from you? Du Ming said unhappily, Xian stop fooling around. Du Xian snorted and said, I want to take Brother Ji Dong as my master. Ji Dong thought for a moment and said, how about this, Xian? If your magic can break through to level 60 within 3 years, I'll take you as my disciple. What do you think? Level 60 in 3 years? Du Xian was stunned for a moment and said, it seems a little difficult. However, for a genius like me, it shouldn't be a problem. Then it's a deal. Pinky swear. As she spoke, she stretched out her white and tender hand and raised her pinky finger to Ji Dong. Ji Dong pulled her hand helplessly. He wanted Du Xian to back off. Even though she had an innate elemental body, it was almost impossible for Du Xian who was only at level 40, to break through the biggest bottleneck of a magician, the 6th crown, within 3 years. Du Sikong looked at his daughter and couldn't help but frown. He knew this girl too well. She wouldn't be so enthusiastic unless it was something she was extremely interested in. It was definitely not that simple for her to want to take Ji Dong as her master. Could it be that this girl had taken a fancy to him? However, he had 2 beauties by his side. In terms of strength, Ji Dong was indeed very strong. However, in the eyes of Du Sikong, who had an extremely traditional personality, his lifestyle was somewhat unflattering. Ji Dong said to Du Ming, "After I spar with President Du tomorrow, I might have to leave Sky Water City. It's not far from the start of the battle of Saint and Evil, so I might not have time to teach you anything during this period of time. Before I leave, I will leave behind a set of basic techniques for you. You just need to practice diligently. After the battle of Saint and Evil ends, you can come to Central Plains City to find me. I'll be waiting for you there." Hearing the words Battle of Saint and Evil, Du Ming's eyes lit up and said, "Teacher, can I also participate in the Battle of Saint and Evil with you? I also want to contribute to the continent." Yes, I'll go as well," Du Xian hurriedly said in excitement. Du Sikong said angrily, "Both of you shut up. What kind of place do you think the Battle of Saint and Evil is? Is it somewhere you can go? Don't disturb Mr. Ji Dong's rest. Come with me." Although he had never been to the Battle of Saint and Evil, he had a deep understanding of the place. Who knew how many youths who entered the Battle of Saint and Evil had stayed there forever? Of course, he knew that the Battle of Saint and Evil was the best place to gain experience. However, he only had a son and a daughter. How could he bear to let them take the risk? Du Sikong pulled his son and daughter out of the room. Before leaving, he even gave an apologetic smile to Hyoheim. Ji Dong shook his head helplessly. He really wanted to obtain the vast sea jade nectar, but he didn't want Du Sikong to misunderstand him. After all, he had always thought of himself as a bartender. Although he didn't think that the bartenders' guild in this world was very orthodox, they were all from the same origin. He didn't want to hurt the bartenders' guild. The Flaming Bar had always been looking forward to seeing him and the god of wine Du Sikong compete in bartending. Tomorrow, he must bring out his best condition. What he didn't accomplish at the ball, he must do it in a more perfect way. As for the vast sea jade nectar, it would depend on fate. Raging flames did not enter the room again. Ji Dong returned to the bed and sat down cross-legged, concentrating on gathering his magic power. This time, at the same time, he also took out the piece of heaven jade that he had obtained from the hands of the Devil Master of the Magic Skill Guild. The soul fire had grown again, so wouldn't it be better to give it another push and raise it to an even stronger level? Only with the support of more chaos would he be able to control the power of the fire god's dual swords as soon as possible. The yin and yang fishes quietly rotated. Even if Ji Dong didn't deliberately train, the fire elements in the outside world would still enter his body through Su Shao. This was also the reason why his mana had recovered a lot when he woke up. At this time, under Ji Dong's deliberate control, the dual flame formation rose behind him. The absorption speed of mana was greatly increased. The yin and yang fishes in his body also sped up. With the slightly beating soul fire as the core, they devoured all the fire elements in the outside world. Ji Dong placed the Jade of Heaven on his palm. Ever since he got this jade token, he hadn't looked at it carefully. The pure white and warm Jade of Heaven emitted a gentle chaos aura. Even though Ji Dong already had the chaos flame, he still felt comfortable when he felt the pure chaos aura. The mana that was absorbed from the outside world through the yin and yang fishes was affected by the aura of the jade token. It instantly became purer and easier to absorb. This was also why so many evil lords hoped to have a piece of Jade of Heaven. Moreover, the Jade of Heaven gave people a sense of calmness when they held it in their hands. With it, they wouldn't have to worry about chi deviation when breaking through any bottleneck. However, Ji Dong clearly had no intention of keeping it. After all, it would be more useful if he fused it with his chaos flame. A faint white color gradually emerged from the bottom of Ji Dong's eyes. The mental strength produced by the soul fire quietly fluctuated and surrounded the Jade of Heaven. This time, Ji Dong only used his soul fire to feel the chaos aura of the Jade of Heaven. Gradually, The chaos flame contained in the soul fire formed a special bridge with the jade of heaven. After the bridge was completed, a faint light flickered. The expression on Ji Dong's face began to change. It was an expression of extreme comfort. The chaos mana brought about a warm, inclusive feeling and a strange sense of creation. In this feeling, Ji Dong only felt that his entire body was immersed in a wonderful chaos aura. The jade of heaven in his hand became brighter and brighter. When the white light rose to the limit, the jade of heaven had already quietly shattered and turned into a puff of mist that enveloped Ji Dong's body. The faint white mist flowed into Ji Dong's body through his pores and breath, permeating every corner of his body. This moment seemed to have become an eternity. Ji Dong's somewhat pale complexion became lustrous. At this moment, his entire skin seemed to be carved out of the jade of heaven. It was indescribably crystal clear. His elegant and noble temperament and the arrogant aura of a king had completely blended together, forming another special characteristic. The formation of the yin and yang flames disappeared from Ji Dong's back. In its place was the assimilation formation that he had recently comprehended. A huge black and white light condensed into the image of a yin and yang fish behind him. Immediately after, the fish began to spin at an unprecedented speed. Chapter 280. A powerful suction and devouring force appeared behind Ji Dong, as if a huge mouth was silently opening. Not only was the fire element in the air present, elements of other attributes were also surging over at an extremely fast speed. Just like when Ji Dong first obtained the chaos origin, the terrifying devouring effect appeared once again. The entire heavenly water city was swept clean of all magic attributes, turning into a mana vacuum. However, the huge vortex behind Ji Dong didn't seem to have any intention of stopping, as it continued to devour at a frenzied pace. Although the devouring force was tremendous, it would completely vaporize as soon as it entered Ji Dong's body. Only a very, very small portion could truly fuse with his body. Perhaps only a 10,000,000th of the ordinary elements could be purified into chaotic force. The chaotic flames in Ji Dong's body surged silently. Not only was Ji Dong's body constantly nourished by the chaotic flames, even his soul was cleansed by the rapid growth of the chaotic flames. The chaotic force easily refined the impurities in his body, making his body even more resilient. His throbbing soul fire also became more and more powerful. Previously, Ji Dong's soul fire had already reached 5 inches through constant cultivation and accumulation, but this time, it seemed to have reached a wondrous realm under the effects of the heaven jade. This was the second time Ji Dong had devoured the heaven jade. Unlike the first time, the devouring this time directly triggered a phenomenon in the world and devoured the magic. The reason for this was very simple. Ji Dong was completely different from the last time he devoured it. When Ji Dong had used the heaven jade for the first time, he only possessed the origin of chaos. Even the chaotic flames were extremely minute, but he now possessed the soul fire. The soul fire was produced after the chaotic flames and mental strength fused together. Its existence proved that Ji Dong's origin of chaos had completely fused with his mental strength. Hence, when he used the second piece of heaven jade, the phenomenon when he first condensed the origin of chaos appeared. The spiritual energy in the world was ignited by the chaos and was summoned by the soul fire in his body. Outside the door, the flaming bar and Ah Jin had already returned to the hall outside. Ah Jin's eyes were filled with shock. He wanted to rush into the room, but the flaming bar stopped him. "Don't go. He's at a crucial moment now. He can't be disturbed at all. Ji Dong, oh Ji Dong, I never thought that your understanding of chaos had already reached such a realm. Could it be that your chaotic mana has advanced to the next level? If that's the case, you're one step closer to the realm I'm looking forward to." Ah Jin said in shock. "Master, are you saying that the mana in the air has been completely extracted because Ji Dong is cultivating?" Raging Flame nodded her head and said, I reckon that in this battle with the Alliance Master of the Demon Alliance, he activated the power of the Fire God and had a great impact on himself. He gained a new understanding of his soul fire, so at this time, he directly used that piece of heaven jade to fuse with his own soul fire, striking while the iron is hot, pushing his chaos magic power to another level. This is also good, although Tianshui City is not a safe place, but for a while, no one should disturb him. Ah Jin, you guard here, no matter who it is, do not let them in. Yes, master. Ah Jin nodded and stood at the door. The flaming bar gently pushed the door open and walked into the room like a red cloud. At this moment, Ji Dong's face gradually turned red. Droplets of sweat also appeared on his face. The comfort he felt when the chaotic force had just increased gradually disappeared. The chaotic fire that was already more than a foot tall had already spread from his chest to his brain. A burning sensation he had never felt before continuously stimulated every part of Ji Dong's body. The mana in his body clearly didn't increase by much, but he could clearly feel that his body was about to explode. The flaming bar stood silently in front of the bed. At this moment, the room was filled with powerful ripples of the chaotic force. If a regular magician was here, they definitely wouldn't be able to endure the huge influx of mana from the outside world. However, the flaming bar stared at Ji Dong as if he didn't feel anything at all. Ji Dong's skin became redder and redder. The redness didn't seem healthy. It even gave off a strange feeling. Under the redness, layers of intense white light rippled continuously, as if they were looking for a way out. He has really reached such a realm. The flaming bar's eyes were filled with astonishment. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If he knew that Ji Dong's understanding of the soul fire had reached such a level, he would have brought Ji Dong back to the Earth's core lake to absorb the heaven jade. There were even more mana elements there, and they were all fire elements for Ji Dong to absorb. Moreover, it was much safer there. He could also lend Ji Dong a helping hand. However, he couldn't do it now. Ji Dong could only rely on himself. Ji Dong, you can do it. You can definitely break through this realm. After breaking through, you will enter a whole new realm, and you will gradually be able to truly use the chaotic force. Soul suppression. Controlling fire with your mind. The secret of the soul fire is to control chaos with your soul. No matter how painful it is, you must confine the chaos within your soul and control it firmly. Otherwise, you will never be able to fuse with the chaos ever again. The flaming bar's voice resounded in the depths of Ji Dong's soul. Ji Dong's spirit was lifted. He never doubted the guidance of the flaming bar. The flame of chaos that had merged with his soul was about to break through the fusion of his soul and form a new system. However, with the reminder of the flaming bar, Ji Dong used all his strength to control the flame of chaos from the outside to the inside, pushing it towards the center of the yin-yang fish on his chest. This was definitely a difficult and painful process. Noises could be heard coming from outside. Obviously, the people from the Bartenders Guild had noticed that something was wrong and rushed over. Not only the Bartenders Guild, the elemental vacuum in Tianshui City had also attracted the attention of various forces. The Magic Guild's branch in Tianshui City, the royal family of the North Water Empire, and some other hidden forces had begun to search for the source of the mana vacuum in Tianshui City. The redness on Ji Dong's face gradually faded. With his strong will, he finally blocked all the chaos chi that had broken through the surface of his skin. Although it was an extremely difficult process to compress it back into his chest, because the full output of his soul power gave him a splitting headache, and his brain felt like it was about to break, he still controlled it with all his strength. With the flaming bar by his side, he had no worries. He trusted the flaming bar even more than he trusted himself. The white, throbbing fire of soul pulsed violently in Ji Dong's body. Every time it pulsed, his body would tremble slightly. The violent undulations made him look like he was sifting chaff. Although the redness on his face had faded, more sweat flowed out. There were no impurities that flowed out with the sweat, because the impurities had all been vaporized by the chaotic fire. The yin-yang fishes were also spinning violently. Stimulated by the chaotic force, the enormous mana undulations were moving in the same rhythm as Ji Dong's spiritual force. Although they could not help Ji Dong suppress the chaotic fire, they could help Ji Dong's spiritual force become more stable. Outside the door, Jin blocked the entrance. In front of her, Du Xikong's family and the leaders of the Magic Guild's branch in Tianshui City had all arrived. Gu Chen's eyes were filled with disbelief. He said, "Miss Jin, what's going on?" "The deacon elder is," Jin said indifferently, "Ji Dong is cultivating. No one is to disturb him. All of you back off. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Gu Chen and Du Xikong looked at each other and took a few steps back, according to Jin's instructions. "Little Miss Jin, are you saying that the demonic energy in Tianshui City was suddenly swept away because the Elder of Law Enforcement was cultivating?" Jin did not speak again and only nodded. Gu Chen pondered for a moment. Soon, he made a decision. He said to the two vice leaders beside him, "Go and make arrangements immediately. Gather all the magic masters in the guild and surround the bartenders' guild to protect the elder." Although he did not know what Ji Dong was cultivating, he could imagine that for such a phenomenon to occur, Ji Dong must have made a breakthrough in his strength. As the vice leader of the Magic Guild, he knew very well what to do at a time like this. The two vice presidents of the branch left quickly. Gu Chen turned to Du Xikong and said, "President Du, you and Miss Jin can guard this place. I'll go outside. I think the officials of the North Water Empire will be here soon. I'll deal with them. We can't let anyone disturb Elder Deacon's cultivation." Du Xikong nodded hurriedly and said, "I've already given the order. All the magic masters of our guild, who are 4 champions and above, are here. This room is in the center of the guild. Our people have already surrounded the room." Looking at the arrangement of the two people in front of her, Jin's expression relaxed a little, and she nodded to them. Gu Chen walked over quickly. At this moment, he did not know whether he was surprised or happy. Although he did not see it with his own eyes, he knew from Du Xikong the entire process of the battle between Ji Dong and Jin and the Demon Alliance. Even the Demon Alliance's alliance leader, who had a divine weapon, could not stop the young deacon elder of the guild. Du Xikong, the god of wine who was 7 champions, said that he did not even have the courage to release his magic power in front of him. What did this prove? The headquarters' decision was correct. With such an elder in the guild, in the near future, this elder might be the successor of the next president. Ever since Shangguan Yinkong left the Magic Master Guild, the power of the entire Magic Master Guild had been greatly weakened due to the absence of a supreme being. Otherwise, the Magic Skill Guild would not have dared to openly provoke them. Not long ago, the guild suddenly erupted and annexed the Magic Skill Guild. Their strength had greatly increased. This undoubtedly made all the members of the Magic Master Guild rejoice. However, as the president of the Skywater City branch, Gu Chen also fully understood some of the problems behind the great increase in strength. The Magic Master Guild and the Magic Skill Guild, these two great guilds, suddenly merged. This was extremely shocking news to any empire on the continent. The two great guilds practically controlled more than 60% of the magic masters on the continent. That was more than 60%. In other words, the number of magic masters controlled by the 5 great empires combined was not as many as the 2 great guilds. How could the 5 empires not be wary of this? If the merged guilds did not have enough experts to hold the fort and intimidate the 5 empires, this merger might not be a good thing for the guilds. It might even be the fuse for their destruction. Recognizing this point, Gu Chen was extremely worried about the future of the guild. Of course, he did not know that Hilo, who had already taken over the position of president of the Magic Master Guild, had already considered this point. He had sent a detailed battle report of the duel between the Magic Master Guild and the Magic Skill Guild to the royal families of the 5 empires. Needless to say, the 2 generations of King Equality and the Diamond Core were present at that time. According to the news that the other 4 empires received, the final result was the 6 great Supreme Being experts joining hands. Hilo's battle report only said that the 6 great Supreme Being experts were in closed-door training, but he did not say where they were training. With the deterrence of such 6 experts, Hilo was not afraid of what the 5 empires would do. What he needed was time. As long as he had a few years' time, the 2 guilds would be completely merged. At that time, even without the deterrence of the 6 great Supreme Being experts, absolutely no one would dare to touch the Magic Master Guild. Of course, if Hilo knew of Gu Chen's thoughts, Hilo would definitely praise him greatly. Currently, Gu Chen's handling of Ji Dong's training could be described as perfect. Although the royal family of the North Water Empire was powerful, if they knew that the change in the weather was caused by the Magic Master Guild's elders in closed-door training again, wouldn't they have to re-evaluate the strength of the Magic Master Guild? It could also protect Ji Dong here to train quietly. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The bartending competition between Ji Dong and Du Xikong on the second day was not carried out in the end, because Ji Dong was in the process of training. 7 days had already passed. What shocked all the magicians in Tianshui City was that during these 7 days, there was not a single type of magic element appearing in Tianshui City. The elemental vacuum was still ongoing. Of course, the magicians belonging to the Magic Master Guild were extremely proud, because this elemental vacuum was caused by their guild's elders' training. There was no need for Gu Chen to order at all. Every magician in the guild, with a strong sense of pride, wholeheartedly guarded the Bartenders Guild. Most of the magicians didn't know what Ji Dong looked like, but they all knew that this law enforcement elder from the guild was incomparably powerful. The elemental vacuum around Tianshui City was the best evidence. Who could do this? Chapter 281. In Tianshui City, most of the magic masters were talking about how the disciplinary elder was breaking through the 9 crowns and becoming a supremacy. After Lonely Star's negotiation, the officials of the North Water Empire kept quiet about the current elemental vacuum. They even sent the royal guards to seal off the streets around the Bartenders Guild. In the circle of magic masters in Tianshui City, the most discussed topic was the identity of the disciplinary elder and how powerful he was. At least, with their joint efforts, Ji Dong was not affected at all. Bartenders Guild, Ji Dong's room. 7 days. Ji Dong had been struggling in pain for 7 whole days. At this moment, his entire body was wrapped in a layer of mist. That mist was not only the steam of his sweat, but also the dense aura of chaos. After 7 days, he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. In the faint mist, the air was vaguely distorted. That distortion was not caused by the distortion of his own fire attribute mana, but by the fluctuation of his spiritual energy. In these 7 days, Ji Dong felt that his mental strength was about to collapse more than once. However, every time this happened, his soul would recall the call of the flaming bar. The flaming bar's voice was so gentle and pleasant. Every word of encouragement from her was like a wake-up call that pulled Ji Dong back from the brink of collapse. 7 days. Ji Dong struggled in pain for 7 days. The flaming bar also accompanied him for 7 days. During these 7 days, she did not move at all. She just stood there and felt every change in Ji Dong's body. Once she realized that Ji Dong could not hold on any longer, she would save him at all costs. In these 7 days, the emotion that arose the most in the flaming bar's heart was touched. She was touched because of Ji Dong. It was not because of the improvement of his strength or his determination, but because every time she called out to him, his spiritual world would seem to have been reborn. There were several times that even the flaming bar thought that Ji Dong could not hold on any longer and was about to make a move. However, under those circumstances, he would endure it again after hearing the flaming bar's voice. The flaming bar was no longer the queen of the Earth's core, who lived a lonely life in the core world, and did not understand anything about the outside world. Because of Ji Dong, she had too many feelings for him. How could she not understand the reason why Ji Dong was in such a state? There was only one reason. He did not lie to her. In his heart, she was his only woman. It was such deep feelings that supported him to overcome difficulties again and again. Suddenly, a distorted light that was getting more and more intense emerged from Ji Dong's chest. The flaming bar's heart trembled, and her gaze was fixed on the position of Ji Dong's chest. She knew that the most crucial moment was coming. This was also the last hurdle. Whether or not he could overcome this hurdle was completely the difference between life and death. Even she subconsciously clenched her fists. Ji Dong, you must do your best. That's right, Ji Dong had indeed reached the juncture of life and death. In the past 7 days, the huge chaotic fire condensed in his body had been completely compressed under the effect of his mental strength. In the beginning, it almost broke through the surface of his skin and entered the outside world. Now, it was completely restrained within the range of his chest. Ji Dong had experienced too much pain. After persevering again and again, his mental strength had also broken through one bottleneck after another. It was constantly improving, and constantly exerting strong suppression on the chaotic fire. Only mental strength could control the most fundamental power of the world that was filled with the aura of creation. At this moment, the inside of Ji Dong's chest was completely white. The yin and yang fishes had disappeared. Not only the mana from the outside world, but even the mana within Ji Dong's body had been devoured by the powerful aura of chaos. At this moment, apart from mental strength, there was only the chaotic fire existing in his body. The two were fused together and constantly clashing with each other. The chaotic fire wanted to break free from the control of his mental strength, but Ji Dong's mental strength was doing its best to fuse with it. They were entangled together, and the space in which the chaotic fire could move became smaller and smaller. It felt like the inside of Ji Dong's chest was like a huge piece of heavenly jade that was burning. The chaotic fire was rapidly compressed inside. The origin of chaos was creation. After the chaotic fire devoured Ji Dong's mana, this kind of creativity was completely unleashed. Naturally, what was created was also chaos. Such a huge chaotic fire launched wave after wave of powerful attacks on Ji Dong's mental strength. However, Ji Dong's mental strength had also been shattered countless times, but it had risen again countless times. It had never allowed the chaotic mana to rush out of his body. At this moment, Ji Dong's mental strength was many times more powerful than before after going through 9 consecutive transformations. The massive spiritual undulations launched a final attack on the chaotic fire. The chain reaction caused by the piece of heavenly jade had come to an end. After 7 days of suppression by Ji Dong's mental strength, the chaotic fire finally yielded. But even so, when Ji Dong's mental strength fused with the chaotic fire and compressed it, the chaotic fire became denser and denser, and white liquid started to appear in Ji Dong's chest. At this moment, a powerful counterattack erupted. As if an explosive had been ignited, Ji Dong only felt an unparalleled explosive force suddenly blossoming in his chest. In an instant, his mental strength, which had become incomparably tough after going through 9 transformations, let out a sound like glass shattering once again. He vaguely saw the chaotic fire in his body emitting thousands of rays of light as it launched a final attack with all its might. Can't hold on anymore? Could it be that after persevering for so long, I still can't hold on? Ji Dong could totally spread his mental strength out of his chest and let the chaotic force be released. When the chaotic force was in a larger space, its explosive force would definitely be weaker. However, if that was the case, everything that he had done before would be for naught. As the saying goes, the first spurt of energy, the second will be weak, and the third will be exhausted. If he were to do it again, he really didn't know if he could make it this far. At this moment, the voice that had saved him countless times resounded in the depths of his soul once again. This time, it wasn't any guidance or encouragement, but an unprecedented gentleness that spread in Ji Dong's soul with the emotions that he had longed for a long time. Ji Dong, I don't know why, but I missed you very much today. Boom! In an instant, Ji Dong felt as if his entire soul was about to explode. His mental strength, which was already on the verge of shattering, exploded with a deafening bang. It collided with the chaotic flames and caused an unprecedented explosion. Ji Dong's entire body let out a muffled bang. The entire Bartenders Guild also shook violently because of this muffled bang. A mist of blood flowed out from every pore on Ji Dong's body, dyeing the mist around his body light red. However, after this violent explosion, the chaotic fire that was about to break through the restraints was pushed back to the core of his chest by the explosive mental strength. The terrifying spiritual energy formed an unparalleled spiritual storm amidst the explosion, completely fusing with the extremely compressed soul fire. The white color could no longer expand outward. In an instant, it had already been immersed in the explosive spiritual energy, forming a small white orb. The orb had a diameter of 1 inch, but it was extremely solid. Ji Dong's mental strength circulated madly around this bead. At this moment, a brand new door finally opened in front of him. Everything around him was white. Ji Dong's mental strength extended infinitely along with his thoughts, extending to every corner of Tianshui City in the outside world. An enormous mental undulation surged like a tide, and then retreated like a tide. Finally, it condensed in Ji Dong's mind. Another completely transparent, bizarre whirlpool appeared in Ji Dong's mind. He could see every meridian, every piece of muscle, and even the tiniest energy undulation in his body. Even the tiniest dust could not escape the control of his mental strength. The transparent whirlpool in his mind and the chaotic pearl in his chest shone brilliantly. Although the soul fire had disappeared, the miraculous connection between the whirlpool in his mind and the chaotic pearl in his chest gave him a special feeling that he had never felt before. The flaming bar stared blankly at Ji Dong. She watched as the light red mist gradually dissipated. She watched as the man with black hair draped over his shoulders and exuding a special temperament sat there. Her heart trembled. He had succeeded. He had finally succeeded. With the strength of a 6-crown warrior, with his seemingly incomparably weak mana, he had passed the test of primal chaos and evolved into his own primal chaos origin. This was the true primal chaos origin. It was no longer the uncontrollable primal chaos of the past, but a primal chaos that truly belonged to him, a creation that belonged to him. Ji Dong, am I really that important to you? I really can't imagine that your mental strength could break through to such a level. Do you know that the formation of the chaotic pearl means that your mental strength and the primal chaos you control have reached the saint level? I'm afraid that in this radiant continent of the 5 elements, there is no other human who can reach this level. You have already broken through the most crucial barrier for humans to enter the saint level. When your mana reaches level 99, you will truly enter the palace of the saint level. You are currently only 20 years old. In a short span of 20 years, it took me 10,000 years to complete this process. The 2 great sovereigns used 30,000 years to reach this level, but you only used a short 20 years. Flaming Bar himself didn't know what kind of mood he was in at this moment. The formation of the chaotic pearl meant that Ji Dong could truly control the power of primal chaos, and was no longer passively affected by primal chaos. A faint buzzing sound began to appear from within Ji Dong's body. The first thing that appeared was the dual radiance of sun and moon gloves that had been fused into his hands with the fusion divine art. Although the crystal crown on the gloves had been broken, at this moment, when they emerged from Ji Dong's hands, they emitted a strange radiance. The blue and red that had been soaked by the Yang fire and the Yin fire had completely turned into black and gold. The gloves had actually evolved even without the crystal crown. Next was the vermilion bird bracelet. The red bracelet that was originally a storage magic tool with a golden phoenix circulating around it had also undergone an earth-shattering change. The red base color had turned into a sparkling and translucent white, just like the purest ice-type jade. It flickered with a translucent and lustrous luster. The golden phoenix soared freely on the bracelet, and gentle phoenix cries could be heard continuously from it. It was Huer's voice. The phoenix cry gradually became deeper. Raging flames could feel that Huer, who was in the bracelet, had once again fallen into a deep sleep. Under the influence of the chaos bead, she had once again embarked on the path of evolution. The twin radiance of sun and moon gloves and the vermilion bird bracelet disappeared as soon as they appeared. The next thing that appeared was the core of life. The originally bewitching green on the leaf-shaped pendant gradually turned into a warm and deep green. One could vaguely see two rays of light, one black and one white, radiating from the green. Clear and deep dragon cries continuously rang out, surrounding Ji Dong and emitting a pure draconic aura. Just like Little Flame, the thick aura of chaos gradually faded, and the sacred evolution fire dragon within it also fell into a deep slumber. It had not even been a year since it hatched, yet it was already beginning to evolve. One could only imagine how terrifying the aura emitted by Ji Dong's chaotic pearl was during its formation. When the radiance of the core of life faded, it once again fused into Ji Dong's body like the two magical weapons from before. Two soft cries rang out from Ji Dong's body at the same time. An incomparably powerful aura condensed into the sharpest sword aura and instantly broke out of his body. This formless and invisible sword aura directly spread out from the rooftop and soared into the sky. It only gradually disappeared after a few breaths of time. However, this terrifying aura shocked Tianshui City once again. At the same time, the elemental vacuum situation in Tianshui City finally began to be lifted. Ji Dong's expression gradually became calm. As he breathed softly, the surface of his skin continuously appeared with white light. Two illusory blue and red sword shadows quietly appeared and then disappeared. Flaming Bar's breathing became a little hurried. At the same time, the condensation of the chaotic pearl also brought about the evolution of the dragon and phoenix that had a close spiritual connection with Ji Dong's body through the divine art of fusion. After inhaling and exhaling several times, Ji Dong let out a long breath. A white mist spurted out from his mouth and surrounded his body before being absorbed back into his pores. After 7 days and 7 nights of hard work, he finally succeeded. He slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 282. The moment Ji Dong opened his eyes, there seemed to be countless sparkling electric sparks flying in all directions in the room. It was a strange phenomenon of electricity being generated out of thin air. His eyes were completely transparent white, and a crystal-like light that was more than a meter long shot out of them. The light that seemed to be able to penetrate everything was filled with terrifying spiritual undulations. His gaze instantly landed on the flaming bar. Flaming bar. Ji Dong's voice and gaze became excited almost instantly. Of course, he could feel the strange changes in his body. In a flash, he was already in front of the flaming bar. He opened his arms and embraced the truth that had been sitting in the depths of his soul from the beginning. The flaming bar did not dodge. He even took a step forward and threw himself into Ji Dong's arms. He hugged Ji Dong tightly and murmured softly, "Ji Dong, do you know? You make me proud. My Ji Dong is the best." Ji Dong lowered his head and looked into the flaming bar's eyes. The emotions in his heart burst forth like a river of fire. Their lips met again at this moment. This time there was no panic like before. There was only endless passion. Ji Dong asked for it in a jerky yet fiery manner. The flaming bar's arms slid around his neck and hugged him tightly. In that instant, Ji Dong could only feel his thoughts expanding infinitely. His soul, which had undergone a total of 10 metamorphoses and evolved, had truly merged with the flaming bar's soul for the first time. He saw a dazzling red lotus, a red orchid. That was the flaming bar's soul. Unlike his own transparent whirlpool of nothingness, the flaming bar's soul was actually like a real red lotus. When his soul entered it, it danced around the red lotus gently. Above the red lotus's soul, layers of faint red ripples were emitted. They were completely entangled with his soul, fusing with each other and feeling each other. At this moment, both his physical and spiritual enjoyment had reached an unprecedented height. Even with his immense spiritual power, Ji Dong could not feel anything in the outside world. In his soul's impression, there was only the flaming bar. He could clearly feel the halo emitted by the red lotus. It was as if the flaming bar had opened its heart to him. That endless, wonderful feeling seemed to have made every cell in his body come alive. The flaming bar's spirit became brighter and brighter. The originally silent red seemed to have come alive, becoming translucent and translucent, as if it was carved out of rubies. Rich spiritual power rolled back, entangling Ji Dong's soul that was filled with intense love. The two of them fused and permeated each other. Ji Dong suddenly felt the flaming bar's body tremble. An unimaginably huge energy aura appeared and disappeared in a flash. He was so close to being completely melted in that energy wave. In the next moment, his body was pushed away by the flaming bar. The flaming bar stood there. Ji Dong realized that a strange change had happened to her perfect face, her long neck, and her spring onion-like fingers. It was just like the crystal-clear red lotus that he had seen in the depths of the flaming bar's soul. The flaming bar's skin had also turned into a crystal-clear red. At this moment, the flaming bar had become even more beautiful. In Ji Dong's eyes, she was like a real goddess that had descended to the mortal world. She was filled with precious light. Meanwhile, the flaming bar was completely stunned. She stood there in a daze, staring at Ji Dong. Her body was trembling slightly. Flaming bar, what happened to you? Ji Dong instinctively glanced at his body. He was shocked to find that he was completely naked. There was not a single piece of clothing on him. During the past 7 days and 7 nights, the immense chaotic fire and mental strength had already turned his clothes into ashes. With a thought, a long robe covered Ji Dong's body almost as soon as the thought appeared in his mind. It was a communication from the vermilion bird bracelet. He did not even need to put on his clothes. However, he was currently immersed in the intense passion of the flaming bar and did not notice this at all. When he looked at the flaming bar again, he realized that the red on the flaming bar's body had become even more intense. It was as if it was about to combust. Only then did he realize that the flaming bar's change was not due to her nakedness. Ji Dong, call Ah Jin over. Let's return to the core world. The flaming bar's voice was trembling slightly. However, Ji Dong could clearly hear a strange emotion in that tremble. It was filled with a special excitement. What was going on with the flaming bar? This was what Ji Dong wanted to know the most. It was also what he was most worried about. He rushed out of the room without hesitation. Before Ah Jin could react, he had already pulled her in. It was also at this moment that the red lotus petals unfurled and engulfed Hyoheim and Ah Jin's bodies. Ji Dong seemed to have thought of something. He raised his hand and pointed it at the wall. A faint golden light shot out from his fingertip. Before it disappeared, it left a line of small words on the wall. In the next moment, the 3 of them had already disappeared without a trace. When Du Sikong arrived, he saw the words left on the wall. Thank you for taking care of me. I have to leave temporarily due to special circumstances. When I return in a few days, I will practice bartending skills with the president. Ji Dong. They've left? Of course, Du Sikong would not know how Ji Dong and the other 2 had left. The magic masters guarding outside would not know either. However, at least from this day onwards, the elemental waves in Tianshui City had returned to normal. However, no one knew what had happened to the mysterious enforcer elder of the Magic Guild. Only the magic masters guarding outside the Bartenders Guild had seen 2 sharp sword cheese pierce through the air. In that instant, the sky seemed to have been torn apart. Although it was only for a short period of time, the scene that shook their souls to the core was forever engraved in their hearts. The core world. Flaming Bar, what's wrong with you? As soon as he returned to the core world, Ji Dong discovered that Flaming Bar was trembling violently, as if she was enduring some kind of intense pain. Flaming Bar saw Hyoheim's movement, and her eyes were filled with a complicated light. She held his hand and said, Ji Dong, I don't know why this happened either. Why did my mana, which had not changed for thousands of years, have such a change? But all of this was brought to me by you. I might be evolving. You and Ajin wait for me here. I will return in at least 3 days, at most a month. As soon as she finished speaking, a red light flowed. Flaming Bar had already turned into a red light and flowed away from Ji Dong's hand. In an instant it disappeared into the Earth's core lake. Flaming Bar evolved? Ji Dong stood there dumbfounded. All that remained in his mind were the words that Flaming Bar had said before she left. Could it be that the contact between his soul and hers had triggered her evolution? The question that he had never asked before appeared in his mind again. Just how powerful was Flaming Bar? A saint-tier? She should be a saint-tier. Otherwise, how could she defeat the 2 sovereigns and control the core world? Flaming Bar, what exactly did you mean by evolving? Even though Ji Dong understood that evolving should be a good thing, he was still very worried about Flaming Bar. He had just experienced the process of evolving the chaotic fire. He had endured so much pain and almost collapsed more than once. What if Flaming Bar had to face the same pain during the evolution process? Why didn't she stay here to evolve? If that was the case, he could at least accompany her. It had only been a moment since Ajin was pulled into the room by Ji Dong and returned to the Earth's core lake. She only reacted now. She looked at Hyoheim in annoyance and asked, What exactly is going on? Ji Dong turned to look at Ajin. When Ajin met his eyes, her body trembled violently. She could clearly feel that Ji Dong's simple gaze seemed to have seen through everything about her. It was as if she was naked in front of him. His calm gaze revealed an indescribable magic, causing Ajin to tremble both physically and mentally. However, she could not shift her gaze away no matter what. Ji Dong was also stunned when he saw Ajin. This was because he realized that when he focused his gaze on Ajin's entire body appeared in his mind. Her height, weight, 3 measurements, whether her emotions were intense, the changes in her vital signs, the changes in her body's magical power, and her magical power level. Everything was clearly displayed in his spiritual world. What's going on? Why am I seeing all this? Immediately afterward, his mental strength spread out in a radiating manner, covering the entire Earth's core lake like a large net. Even the massive magical waves emitted by the Earth's core lava could not distort his mental strength. There was no need to see with his eyes at all. Ji Dong's mental strength had already spread to every part of the Earth's core lake. It had been 10 years since he first came here. He had come here countless times in the past 10 years, but he had never seen everything about the Earth's core lake as clearly as he did now. This huge lake was hundreds of square kilometers wide. Although his mental strength could not completely spread to the end, he could clearly feel the outline of the Earth's core lake. He even discovered that there was a place filled with massive magical waves 1,000 meters above the Earth's core lake. It seemed like he could reach another world through that place. Needless to say, that was the passageway to another layer of the Earth's core world. The Flaming Bar had said that there were a total of 18 layers in the Earth's core world. This was the deepest layer, which was also the world that belonged to the Queen of the Earth's core Flaming Bar. If he went out from here, he would probably reach the 17th layer. Ji Dong's mental power continued to probe deeper into the magma. The moment his mental power entered the scorching magma, he immediately felt that his control surface, which was originally huge, was rapidly being compressed. The range of his mental power's probing range gradually shrank as his mental power probed deeper and deeper. All of a sudden, a huge shockwave came from the magma lake. Ji Dong's entire body trembled, and he almost fell to the ground. His mental strength was rebounded by this sudden shockwave, but in that instant of contact, Ji Dong had already vaguely sensed the presence of the flaming bar's aura. That's right, the flaming bar should be cultivating somewhere at the bottom of this Earth's core lake. At this moment, he also understood why the flaming bar was unwilling to stay here to evolve. It was because she would release an extremely large amount of magical power during the evolution process. She was afraid of hurting herself and Jin. Ji Dong figured this out not because he had a sudden epiphany, but because he discovered that the fire element in the magma lake was rapidly expanding and becoming denser. The original liquid was even turning into a solid. He could not think of any other reason other than the magical power that the flaming bar emitted could cause this phenomenon. All of Ji Dong's discoveries were made in an instant. When he came back to his senses, he just happened to discover that Jin was glaring at him fiercely. Jin, are you all right? Ji Dong asked tentatively. Jin said angrily, You're the one who's not all right. What did you do just now? Ji Dong scratched his head and said, It seems that my mental strength has become stronger. Many things that I could not sense before suddenly appeared in my mental world, so I was a little absent-minded. I'm really sorry. Jin frowned slightly and said, Ji Dong, do you feel that the temperature here is rising? Only then did Ji Dong realize that Jin's expression had changed slightly, and there was a faint look of pain in his eyes. Among the 5 elements, fire subdued metal. The energy waves in the Earth's core lake were changing, so the temperature here would naturally rise continuously. Ji Dong, who possessed the chaotic fire and the ultimate dual fire, naturally did not feel anything wrong. He only felt that his body was more comfortable. However, as a metal element devil master, Jin had a completely different feeling. Ji Dong took a step forward and stretched out his hand to grab Jin's shoulder. Jin quickly dodged and dodged Ji Dong's hand. She looked at him warily and said, What are you doing? Ji Dong said in annoyance, What can I do? Of course I'm helping you. Do you think that I'll violate you? Don't worry, I don't have any designs on the iceberg. You. Jin was about to flare up, but Ji Dong's hand was already on her shoulder. The next moment, a strange feeling suddenly came over her. The scorching heat in the surroundings was instantly swept away, replaced by a faint warmth and an indescribable feeling of comfort. Ji Dong turned around and was already behind Jin. He said, Sit down. I know that the origin of chaos should have appeared under the influence of the flaming bar, but it hasn't condensed into chaotic gold yet. We can't understand the power of the flaming bar, but it's not human after all, so it can't help you condense it directly. It just so happens that I've gained some new understanding of chaotic magic. Come and feel it. It might be of help to you. As he spoke, he had already pressed Jin down without waiting for her to speak. The two of them sat cross-legged on the platform. The next moment, Jin felt an extremely powerful spiritual wave completely enveloping her body. Immediately after, her soul trembled slightly. Ji Dong's spiritual power had already surged into her brain in an instant and connected with her soul. Chapter 283. The wonderful feeling was produced the moment Ji Dong's spiritual power broke into Jin's spiritual world. In fact, Ji Dong himself did not know that what he was doing was extremely dangerous. If Jin's soul resisted, then his soul would definitely collide with Jin's soul, and the result was very likely that his soul would devour Jin's. Even if he discovered it in time, it would have irreversible effects on Jin. Fortunately, Jin didn't have much resistance towards him. Ji Dong's soul power was far too powerful compared to Jin's. Before Jin's soul could react, Ji Dong had already completely invaded Jin's soul world and completed the soul communication. There was one thing that Ji Dong didn't know. What he did was equivalent to temporarily injecting his own soul into Jin's soul. No matter how powerful his soul was after he left, there would still be a soul image left in Ah Jin's soul. In this way, no matter what happened in the future, Ah Jin's soul would always have an image of him, and he wouldn't have any resistance towards him. In the relationship between a man and a woman, there was a saying, "Open your heart and accept the other party." This so-called heart was actually the door of the soul. Ah Jin hadn't opened this door to Ji Dong, but when his soul vortex had just condensed and his mental strength had reached an unprecedented level, he had accidentally knocked open Ah Jin's soul door. In other words, he had knocked open Ah Jin's heart and forced his way in. Even though he had done it completely to help Ah Jin, the repercussions of doing so were something he hadn't expected. What appeared in Ah Jin's consciousness was a feeling. That's right, it was a feeling. It was a feeling that Ji Dong's mental strength had simulated. In the past, Ji Dong would definitely not have been able to do this, but now, he had an almost limitless amount of mental strength. With a thought, mental strength could accomplish what he wanted to do with even greater ease than mana. The feeling that Ji Dong gave Ah Jin was very simple. From the first time he sensed the appearance of chaos, to condensing the origin of chaos, to the various feelings he had every time the chaotic fire improved, including the fluctuation of the chaotic fire when he used the Vulcan's dual swords. Every bit of it appeared clearly in Ah Jin's consciousness. In the end, Ji Dong's chaotic fire changed qualitatively and condensed into a chaos pearl at the magic core in his chest. The process of this feeling was very long, but Ji Dong did not stay idle. His massive spiritual power allowed him to easily multitask. He greedily absorbed the increasingly dense fire element in the air and filled his body. Previously, all that was left in his body was his mental energy, and all the mana had been refined by the flames of chaos. But now, when he absorbed it, his body was like a bottomless pit. Ji Dong was pleasantly surprised to find that when every trace of mana fused into his body, it would immediately fuse with his mental energy, or it could be said that his mental energy had complete control over them. Even the smallest fire element was completely controlled by a trace of mental energy, and this level of control was probably something that even a sovereign expert could not achieve. The huge explosion when the chaotic fire and spiritual power collided at the end not only blew up Ji Dong's spiritual world, but also allowed him to have a wider spiritual sea. At the same time, it also cleansed and created the meridians in his body. In addition to the benefits he gained from the battle with Misty Meow, the current Ji Dong had completely entered a brand new realm. When his body was filled with mana, Ji Dong discovered that his mana had already increased to level 65. It was completed from 62 to 65 in just a few days. Perhaps the chaotic fire could not be used as a weapon for direct attacks, but it was a miracle that all wizards dreamed of. Why? It was because of its unparalleled creativity that allowed a wizard to have almost endless potential. Every time this potential was stimulated, the wizard would receive great benefit. After his mana recovered, Ji Dong did not stop. While helping Ah Jin feel the entire process of cultivating the chaotic fire, he also cultivated on his own. At the same time, he had the spare time to think about everything that had happened and feel the changes in his body. The first thing he discovered was that the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon and the Eclipse Phoenix were in deep sleep, and the second was the evolution of the few mana weapons he had. His mana had increased from level 62 to level 65. Perhaps it was not a qualitative leap, but after this breakthrough, Ji Dong felt as if he had been reborn. The comprehensive evolution of his mana weapons and his magical beast companions greatly increased his overall strength. More importantly, the formation of the Chaos Pearl and the establishment of the Soul Vortex allowed him to see another world. Ji Dong only had a smattering of knowledge about what immense mental strength could do, but he had every reason to believe that the immense mental strength he possessed was enough to greatly increase his combat ability. Putting everything else aside, he had used the spirit rose fire to help Ah Jin sense the location of the surrounding enemies, which had saved Ah Jin a lot of trouble when she was hunting enemies. At that time, Ji Dong still needed to focus and expend a lot of mental strength. Moreover, he could only allow Ah Jin to sense a small area of the target she was targeting. But now, this kind of sensing ability was completely different. Ji Dong was even confident that he could use his mental strength to connect with thousands of people at the same time and transmit his thoughts to them. He could even extend his senses to a large area, just like how he could scan the various characteristics of Ajin's vitality into his soul vortex the moment he saw her. When fighting enemies, he could also let his companions sense the enemy's strength, and he might even be able to find the enemy's weakness. In a situation where both sides were equal in strength, with such an innate advantage, how could the enemy resist? In fact, Ji Dong already had the ability to condense his mental strength into a substance, which could be used as a means of attack. Moreover, he now truly had the ability to control the chaotic force. Although he still needed to test all of this in actual combat, Ji Dong did not doubt that he had truly entered the ranks of the strong. Perhaps he still could not fight against a sovereign, but with the strength of his mental strength, he believed that he could escape unscathed from a sovereign. Time passed in meditation. The fire element in the entire area of the core lake became stronger and stronger. In the end, what Ji Dong absorbed into his body was the ultimate dual fire. Just how vast was the area of the core lake? How much energy was needed to turn the entire area into ultimate fire element? This further strengthened Ji Dong's judgment of the saint-leveled strength of the flaming bar. He did not know how powerful a saint-leveled person was, but he was certain that he was still far from being able to face the flaming bar. Ji Dong's mana had been protecting Ajin the entire time. His dense mental strength and a strand of chaotic mana enveloped Ajin. In addition, he had absorbed all the ultimate dual fire element in the vicinity into his body, so Ajin was not affected. Ji Dong could clearly feel that after his guidance, Ajin gradually immersed herself in the feeling of experiencing the mysteries of the chaotic force. Her soul ripples gradually calmed down, and she gradually entered a meditative state. As Ajin entered a meditative state, Ji Dong himself also entered a meditative state. He increased his mana, consolidated his current realm, and sensed the various mysteries of his mental strength after 10 transformations. He also felt the benefits of the chaotic bead. Time passed quickly in this situation. After an unknown period of time, Ji Dong was suddenly awakened by the violent fluctuations of mana. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to find that the entire sky above the core lake had turned into a thick red. It was the same color as the red lotus in the flaming bar. Ji Dong's own mana had been greedily absorbing this extremely pure fire element. This was no longer just pure yang fire and leg fire. There was also a special kind of mana fluctuation. It seemed to be a combination of the ultimate dual fire element and the chaotic fire. If he had to make a comparison, then this thick red color was very similar to the fire god's void slash when he combined his swords and unleashed the power of the blaze and flame sword. However, the fire god's void slash was even more explosive, while the red fire element in front of him had a majestic and elegant aura. It was even gentle and calm. Suddenly, the red light silently split open in front of him, and a huge red lotus with a diameter of 5 meters quietly appeared. The red lotus bud slowly opened in front of him, and a thick fragrance appeared in front of him with a shocking sense of beauty. The flaming bar gradually emerged from the bud with a smile. A smiling raging flame gradually emerged from the flower bud. Her fiery red long hair was draped over her back, just past her buttocks. Her perfect face was so exquisite that even the best sculptor would not be able to portray it. Her perfect body proportions were also in line with the golden ratio, without a single flaw. Her big, dark eyes with a faint red tint to them were even more penetrating than before, and were no longer otherworldly. Instead, they were filled with all kinds of human emotions, excitement, gentleness, and most of all, deep affection. There were only 3 balls of flames covering the 3 most private parts of her body. The exposed skin was so crystal clear, tender, and made one have the urge to take a bite. Especially the pair of slender, round, and flawless legs, which almost caused Ji Dong to have a nosebleed. Right now, the flaming bar was just like the first time he came to the core of the earth. Other than the 3 balls of flames covering her private parts, her naked body was completely exposed to Ji Dong. However, compared to that time, she seemed to have become even more perfect. Her tender skin was a healthy pink, and there was a fragrance as if she had just taken a bath. The affection in her eyes, in particular, made Ji Dong completely intoxicated. With a single step, the flaming bar was already in front of Ji Dong. The red lotus that was supporting her earlier slowly retracted, and turned into a tiny red lotus that merged into the flaming bar's forehead. Only then did Ji Dong realize that there was a tiny red dot in the middle of her forehead. It looked like a tiny gem carved into the shape of a red lotus. Its existence added infinite brilliance to the perfection of the flaming bar. The flaming bar. Ji Dong subconsciously stood up and called out with a trembling voice. At this moment, he was still looking at the goddess in his heart, but this goddess was filled with emotions. Thank you, my Ji Dong. It's your love that has ignited the flames of evolution that have been extinguished for many years. It's the flames of human emotions that have propelled me to evolve once again. Right now, I no longer need to rely on the Earth's core as my foundation. My body has completely merged with this human body. In a sense, it doesn't matter even if I never return to the Earth's core, because I'm already considered a real human. The 3 balls of flames that were covering the private parts of the flaming bar slowly spread, and once again turned into a red dress that covered her perfect, delicate body. However, Ji Dong was not disappointed, because in the next moment, the flaming bar had already leaned into his arms and hugged him. The flaming bar's strength had long reached the peak that she could reach. She had never thought that she would have the chance to evolve once again, but even so, she was already superior to most powerhouses in all aspects. This time, she had evolved once again, a complete evolution that allowed her to enter a brand new world. However, Ji Dong did not notice the deep worry in the depths of the flaming bar's eyes. This was because she knew very well that the advancement of her strength would make it more likely that she would be destroyed. Of course, she would not tell this to Ji Dong. She was not willing to let Ji Dong worry about her. Even she herself did not know whether the advancement of her strength this time was a good or bad thing. She only knew that no matter what happened in the future, she was now truly together with Ji Dong. The apprehensions in her heart were completely cast aside. No matter what happened in the future, she would now enjoy every minute and every second that she was with Ji Dong. It was Ji Dong's passion that ignited the flames of her evolution, and this passion had completely integrated into her body. She knew very well that the feelings between her and Ji Dong would never disappear unless she was destroyed. It had been 10 years. She had known Ji Dong for a whole 10 years. It was only now that she had truly decided to completely accept Ji Dong's feelings. Who knew what would happen in the future? At least they had each other's feelings now, and that was enough. Holding the flaming bar in his arms, surprisingly, Ji Dong did not have any evil thoughts in his heart. There was only a strong sense of attachment. The flaming bar's body was very soft, and it was so comfortable to hug. The fullness of hugging her was something that he would never be willing to exchange for with someone else's entire world. Just like that, the two of them hugged each other. It was just a simple hug, and they stood quietly in the center of the Earth Core Lake. They watched as the red light in the air gradually faded, and the Earth Core Lake returned to its calm state. Chapter 284. When Ji Dong's hand left her shoulder, Ajin had already woken up from her cultivation state. When she saw Ji Dong and the flaming bar hugging each other, she didn't know why, but a strong sense of envy welled up in her heart. It wasn't jealousy, it was envy. She even thought how great it would be if she was the one in his arms. In the next moment she was deeply shocked by this thought. She didn't know why she would think this way, so she immediately lowered her head, stood up, and retreated behind the flaming bar. She didn't dare to look at Ji-dong again. Her usually cold heart was now filled with an indescribable and strange warmth. Ji-dong let go of his arms around the flaming bar, and turned to grab her shoulder. He lowered his head and stared at the flaming bar with eyes filled with intense emotions. After his soul vortex formed, his spiritual power was many times more sensitive than before. In this embrace, he could clearly feel that the flaming bar was different from before. This time, he didn't plan on letting go of this opportunity. The flaming bar didn't think that Ji-dong would voluntarily let go of her embrace. She looked at him in a daze, but when she saw Ji-dong's loving gaze, her heart began to melt. "Flaming bar, I love you." Ji-dong's voice trembled slightly. It seemed as if his soul was trembling as he said these words clearly and instantly. These simple words, which Ji-dong had brewed for 10 years, finally came out of his mouth. He personally told his flaming bar. He didn't know how many times he had wanted to say these words, but how many times he had suppressed these thoughts out of shame. How many times he had seen the raging flames about to be unbearable, and how many times he had closed his eyes, not daring to resist the impulse in his heart. At that moment, when he truly felt the acceptance of the flaming bar, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer and used all the strength in his body to tell her, "I love you, raging flames. From the first time I saw you, when I was only a teenager, I had already fallen deeply in love with you. Perhaps it could be said that it was love at first sight, making me unable to extricate myself. From the first time I saw you, you were the only one I had in this life. No matter if I was cultivating or doing anything else, it was all because of you. I was cultivating so that I could one day be worthy of you, even though I haven't done it yet, but I've really worked hard. For you, I'm willing to give up everything. In the past, I never thought, nor did I dare to think that one day you would become my lover, because I always felt that I wasn't worthy of you. It was only recently, when the 4 years of closed-door training ended, when you and I came to the human world to travel, that I realized that I was getting closer and closer to you, and I could gradually feel my shadow in your heart. I love you because my person, my heart, my everything already belongs to you. Don't ask me why I love you or what I love about you, I don't know, I just love you, love to the bone, my life seems to exist for this love. Raging flames, I don't dare to ask you to love me, but I beg you, let me always have the right to love you, okay?" Looking at the flaming bar, Ji-dong was immersed in a special kind of emotion. His body was trembling and his eyes were red. His excitement even caused the air around him to slightly distort due to his strong spiritual undulations. It had been 10 years. Today, he finally had the courage to say the words, "I love you," to the flaming bar. He had been looking forward to this day for far too long. He didn't even dare to imagine that he would actually say it out loud. At this moment, he suddenly felt carefree, but also extremely worried. Even though he could feel the flaming bar's acceptance of him, he was still afraid that she would reject him. This was because he loved her too much, so much so that he couldn't extricate himself. The flaming bar's eyes gradually turned red. She felt the warmth and sweat of Ji-dong's trembling hands. She looked into his eyes that were filled with endless love. Even though her heart wasn't prepared, and even though Ji-dong's confession was so sudden, the seed of love that had long germinated in her heart couldn't help but grow wildly. He gently raised his hand and stroked Ji-dong's head. "You fool, you're really foolish. Actually, I could sense your feelings from the first time you mixed wine for me. I've always known what you're thinking in your heart, and I've always been able to sense your love. Fool, you're really foolish. Because of your feelings, I hesitated and even swore to never see you again. I couldn't let you affect my heart. Do you still remember when I went missing for a period of time? You couldn't see me in the end. At that time, I was struggling with my heart because we were people from two different worlds. There were too many barriers and estrangements between us. However, I still couldn't help but sink into your love. Every glass of wine you mixed for me was a love poison that you gave me. No matter how strong I was, I still sank into this poison. When I evolved because of the feelings in your soul, I no longer had the ability to reject you. How could I not accept you? Great happiness rushed into Ji-dong's mind. Even his powerful soul vortex seemed to stop spinning at this moment. He frantically poured Flaming Bar into his arms and hugged her tightly, as if he was afraid that she would suddenly disappear. Flaming Bar hugged him back and pressed her face against his shoulder. She said, "Give me a little more time, Ji-dong. I know that you will never go against my wishes. For me, for yourself, and for our future, you can't sink into love now. You still have to work hard for our future. When the day comes when your ability catches up to mine, we can truly be together. Before that, let me feel your love for me. When the day comes when I say the same words to you, I will be your bride, okay?" Okay. Ji-dong cried out of joy. Flaming Bar will be my bride. She will be my bride. She has finally accepted my love. She has really accepted it. At this moment, Ji-dong was speechless. He could already see the day when Flaming Bar put on her wedding dress and walked down the aisle with him. This was the first time he truly felt that he had started to own Flaming Bar. Flaming Bar didn't cry. She smiled. It was a sweet smile that could only appear on the face of the happiest human girl. Just like when Ji-dong finally said the 3 words, her heart was completely opened to Hyoheim. All the knots in his heart were gone. No matter what the future would be, what he wanted now was to enjoy each other's love with her. That was enough. Ajin stood behind the Flaming Bar. She was completely stunned. Even she could feel the overwhelming love Ji-dong had for her during his confession. What kind of love was this? This man was actually so deeply in love. Master was so blessed. Even though her heart was filled with envy, at this moment, she only had her blessings for Ji-dong and the Flaming Bar. It wasn't because of the Flaming Bar, but because of Ji-dong. She didn't know why, but when she saw his unparalleled excitement, her heart was filled with comfort. Bartenders Guild. Brother, do you think your teacher will come back? Why did he suddenly leave after leaving a line of words? Du Xiner asked Du Ming. Du Ming said helplessly, Xiner, you've asked me this question at least 100 times. It's already been a month. Can't you let me have some peace? How would I know when teacher will come back? Du Xiner said unhappily, this teacher of yours is really something. He left without saying a word. He's even staying in my room. Speaking of which, it's really strange. No one saw them leave. How did they suddenly disappear? Could it be that they were teleported away? Brother, I really don't believe that your teacher is even better at mixing drinks than Dad. Du Ming said painfully, Xiner, I'm begging you, okay? Haven't you been working hard recently? Hurry up and go. You're still quite a distance away from level 60. Du Xiner giggled and said, I still have to strike a balance between work and rest. I've made quite a lot of progress this month. I'm more talented than you. It won't be long before I catch up to you. You should be the one working hard. Du Ming's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly said, Xiner, you can't really have fallen in love with teacher, right? You've never been so concerned about another person of the opposite sex. Du Xiner was stunned for a moment. Her pretty face immediately turned red as she said, Brother, you're so annoying. Du Ming slapped his forehead and said, Oh my God, could it be that I was right? I say, Xiner, you've only seen teacher once. It can't be. Could it be that there's really such a thing as love at first sight? Du Xiner looked towards the door and said in a low voice, Brother, I'm afraid I've really fallen in love with Brother Ji-dong at first sight. I don't know what's going on, but to be honest, he's really not very handsome, but that day, before he and Sister Ah Jean went to the northern Mang Mountain to save us, I was already in despair. I thought that I was going to die just like that, and at that time I was thinking, if only someone could come and save me at this time. Then, Dad came, we left, and when I looked at Dad, I was really filled with despair. I thought I would never see Dad again. On the way out of the northern Mang Mountain, I desperately prayed for Dad, praying that someone could save Dad, until I met you guys. You guys told me that there was a law enforcement elder from the Magic Guild who went to save Dad. At that time, I cried happily. When Brother Jidong was carried back, I really couldn't believe that he was the law enforcement elder. After listening to Dad's story of the dangerous process, I finally understood what a hero was. In my heart, Brother Jidong is a hero. Do you remember, when we were young, I said that when I grew up, I would definitely marry a hero, a man who was more talented than me. Now that I've found it, brother, shouldn't you help me? Help you? How can I help you? Exhilarating, I advise you to give up on this idea. Didn't you see the two beauties by teacher's side? Not to mention that red-haired beauty whose face can't be seen, just Audjean alone is prettier than you. Moreover, she also possesses extreme magic power, and although I can't see the face of that red-haired beauty, I can feel that she is definitely more beautiful than Audjean. Moreover, Audjean even calls her master. Do you think that teacher still has the spare time to love you? If that's really the case, I will be even more opposed to you being together with teacher. As a man, your brother is also very loving, but I definitely don't want my sister to fall in love with a man who loves everyone. Du Exhilarating snorted and said, Come on, I don't care, it's natural for beauties to love heroes. It would be strange if Big Brother Jidong didn't have a woman like him. I don't care, I want to be with him. I can't give up once I find a goal. This is my principle. No matter what you say, I will chase after Big Brother Jidong. Didn't someone say that a woman chasing after a man is separated by a layer of gauze? I believe that Big Brother Jidong will always see my good side. I will also work hard to reach level 60 as soon as possible. Oh my God! Exhilarating, you little witch, I really don't know what you're thinking. Forget it, do whatever you want. In any case, teacher won't like you. Du Exhilarating frowned and said, Damn Du Ming, do you have so little confidence in me? To think that I, Du Exhilarating, am also the #1 beauty of the Bartenders Guild. How am I not worthy of Big Brother Jidong? This is not a question of whether you are worthy or not. Forget it, I'm afraid of you, okay? I'm going to practice bartending. Du Ming got up and was about to run when a deep and magnetic voice sounded in his ear. Du Ming, we're outside the guild. Hearing this voice, Du Ming couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at his sister again, and it was obvious that Du Exhilarating hadn't heard it. He couldn't understand how this voice came about, but he clearly knew who the owner of this voice was. Exhilarating, teacher is back. Du Exhilarating was about to pull Du Ming back, but after hearing his words, she couldn't help but be slightly stunned. She then grabbed Du Ming's sleeve and said, Don't try to scare me. Even if Big Brother Jidong really came back, how could you possibly know? Du Ming said helplessly, Let's go outside and take a look, won't we know? To be honest, I don't know how teacher contacted me. When Du Ming saw Jidong, he realized that Jidong was dressed the same as when he first met him. However, for some reason, when he looked at Jidong's deep eyes, he suddenly felt that his teacher seemed to be different from before, but he couldn't tell what had changed. Taking a few steps forward, Du Ming respectfully bowed to Hyoheim and said, Teacher. Jidong nodded to Du Ming, smiled and said, Go and invite President Du, I'm here for an appointment. Chapter 285. Of course, Du Ming understood what Jidong meant by keeping an appointment. He hurriedly led the three of them into the Bartenders Guild. Du Exhilarating, who was at the side, had already taken the initiative to run to Jidong's side. She pulled on his sleeve and said, Brother Jidong, I've been working hard in my cultivation. I'll definitely reach level 60 as soon as possible and let you accept me as your disciple. Jidong's arm shook slightly, and he shook off Du Xian-er's pull without leaving a trace. He said, Miss Xian-er, it's a good thing to work hard in your cultivation. I look forward to you reaching level 60 as soon as possible. Du Xian-er looked at Ji Dong with some dissatisfaction after being shaken off by him. She then looked at the flaming bar, who was wearing a bamboo hat beside Ji Dong. Hyoheim stuck out her tongue and said, Brother Ji Dong, why is this sister always wearing a veil? Is she sick? Ji Dong frowned slightly and said, Miss Xian-er, please conduct yourself with dignity. His tone was obviously a bit heavier. Du Xian-er said that the flaming bar was sick, which was something he couldn't accept. As he spoke, he had already pulled the flaming bar's hand and walked into the bartender's guild with Ajin. Du Xian-er looked at the backs of the three of them and stomped her feet fiercely. She snorted angrily and said to herself, Damn Ji Dong, stinky Ji Dong, I won't give up. How can I not respect myself? I've never even had a boyfriend. The flaming bar chuckled in Ji Dong's ear and said, I didn't expect my Ji Dong to be so popular. Ji Dong smiled slightly and looked at the flaming bar. He said in a low voice, I'm your Ji Dong, not Ji Dong. Flaming bar, are you jealous? Now that he had finally established a relationship with the flaming bar, he was no longer as cautious as before. He could not help but tease the flaming bar. Flaming bar smiled and said, Do I need to be jealous? Your body, your heart, and your soul are all mine. Furthermore, I don't think there's a girl more attractive than me in the human world. Confidence came from ability. If this was said by someone else, Ji Dong would definitely scoff at it. However, it sounded so natural coming from the mouth of the flaming bar. Even Ah Jin nodded his head. At this time, Du Si too had already led a group of bartenders out to greet them. Mr. Ji Dong. Du Sikong took a few steps forward and stopped in front of Ji Dong. Ji Dong reached out and shook hands with him, and said apologetically, President Du, I'm really sorry about that day. Because something happened, we had to leave temporarily. I'm really sorry, please forgive me. It's okay, it's nothing. As long as Mr. Ji Dong is safe, it's fine. Quick, please come in. Du Sikong personally led Ji Dong and the other two inside. Du Xian-er, who followed behind, saw her father and naturally did not go forward to harass Ji Dong. As they walked, Ji Dong said to Du Sikong, President Du, this time I came to fulfill the agreement between us. After the competition with you, I may leave the North Water Empire to prepare for the upcoming battle between the holy and evil. Du Sikong said, Okay, I've already arranged it. I heard in detail from my son about Mr. Ji Dong's bartending skills, and I can't help but want to try it. Mr. Ji Dong, do you mind letting the bartenders in our guild have a look? Ji Dong frowned slightly and looked at Du Sikong meaningfully. He sighed in his heart. He originally did not want to compete with Du Sikong in front of the people of the Bartenders Guild. In that case, even if Du Sikong lost, not many people would know, and it would not affect his reputation as the god of wine. At this time, Du Sikong obviously had a purpose for making this request. The Bartenders Guild had suffered a heavy blow from the demonic alliance this time, and as the president, his influence in the guild had greatly decreased. He wanted to defeat him in bartending and show his bartending skills to increase the members' confidence in him. It was obvious that Du Sikong was full of confidence in himself in this aspect, and there might be other purposes. With the improvement of his mental strength, Ji Dong would be able to see through people more clearly. When Du Sikong made this suggestion to him, his heartbeat was clearly a little faster, which proved that he was restless and had ulterior motives. Although Ji Dong did not know what Du Sikong was plotting, he was not afraid. Moreover, he had saved the entire Bartenders Guild previously, and he believed that Du Sikong would not do anything to harm him. Okay, since that's the case, I'll do as you say, President. However, I will definitely do my best, Ji Dong said faintly. Du Sikong nodded and said, Me too. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful to Mr. Ji Dong. When they arrived at the meeting hall of the Bartenders Guild, Du Sikong first invited Ji Dong and the other two to sit down, and then immediately ordered people to prepare. Mr. Ji Dong, since we're having a spar in our guild, I'm at an advantage in terms of the type of wine. Why don't you suggest the method of the spar? This way, it'll be fair. Ji Dong smiled slightly. This was more than just fair. When two bartenders were competing, if one of them suggested the method of the competition, it would be a great advantage. Almost every bartender had their own style and type of drink that they were best at. Using one's strength to attack the opponent's weakness would undoubtedly greatly increase their chances of winning. Du Sikong clearly did not want to take advantage of Ji Dong, and it fully demonstrated his strong confidence as the god of wine. Ji Dong nodded and said, "Okay, then I won't stand on ceremony." There was a flash of hesitation in Du Sikong's eyes. He clenched his teeth and said, "Mr. Ji Dong, I have another suggestion. Our competition this time can also be considered a grand event in the world of bartenders. What do you think about this? Let's each add some bet. Perhaps this will stimulate us to better display our bartending skills." After hearing what he said, Ji Dong immediately understood what Du Sikong was planning. Although this was also what he hoped for, he felt very uncomfortable looking at Du Sikong. He pretended not to understand what he meant and said faintly, "What kind of bets are you going to add, President Du?" Du Sikong said, "Mr. Ji Dong naturally won't be interested in ordinary things. I will use a bottle of vast sea nectar as the wager." As soon as these words came out, the bartenders suddenly burst into an uproar. They were already very curious about Ji Dong and Du Sikong's bartending skills. It was only because Du Sikong had told them that Ji Dong's bartending skills were very strong and that he had once defeated Fury, that they were interested. Now that Du Sikong said that he wanted to use the vast sea nectar as the wager, they couldn't help but be shocked. "Dad." Du Ming quickly came to Du Sikong and said angrily, How can you do this? This is—" In the end, he did not say the words biting the hand that feeds you, but the way he looked at his father had completely changed. Du Sikong said in a deep voice, "This is between me and Mr. Ji Dong. You can leave." Since the day Ji Dong said that he wanted to have a bartending competition with him, Du Sikong had been thinking about many things. Ji Dong's magic master strength was unquestionable, but he didn't think that Ji Dong had the ability to compete with him in bartending. Most importantly, the 1,000-year source of life was too attractive to him. That fatal attraction almost stimulated his heart every day. Of course, he knew that he was not leaving a way out for himself by proposing such a wager today. It could even be said that he was biting the hand that feeds him. But he really couldn't help it. He clearly remembered every wine on the famous wines record. As the president of the Bartenders Guild, he finally had the chance to get one of them. How could he not have any thoughts? He knew that with Ji Dong's status, he would definitely keep his promise and not cause trouble for the Bartenders Guild. At most, he would completely offend him, and he would never help the Bartenders Guild in the future. After thinking about it, Du Sikong finally made a decision. He would give up his old face and win the second famous wine for the Bartenders Guild. In that case, his name would be forever engraved in the history of the Bartenders Guild. It should be known that from the first president until now, no one had been able to leave another famous wine on the famous wines record for the guild. Ji Dong looked at Du Sikong calmly. His gaze was very calm, and his expression didn't change at all because of Du Sikong's wager. He just said calmly, "President Du, this wager of yours seems to be a little too expensive. It seems that only the source of life can compare to it." Du Sikong forced a smile and said, "We're just casually comparing note. Although the source of life is ranked lower than the vast sea fine wine in our guild's famous wines record, it's enough to be used as a wager." "Dad, you can't do this." Du Xian also understood at this moment. She rushed up from the side and was even more direct than her brother. She stood in front of Ji Dong and glared at her father. Du Xikong's face darkened. He said, "Men, take the two of them away. It's improper to be so disrespectful in front of an esteemed guest." A few bartenders came up and pulled Du Ming and his sister back. Du Ming kept giving Hyoheim looks, indicating that he shouldn't agree to his father's wager. Du Xian even directly called out. However, Ji Dong turned a blind eye to their reactions. He nodded at Du Xikong and said, "All right, since President Du is so interested, how can Ji Dong not accompany you? I'm also very curious about your guild's famous wines record. How about this, President Du and the famous wines record? I'll use 2 bottles of the Source of Life as a wager. The Source of Life is ranked below the Vast Sea fine wine, so I can't let you suffer a loss, can I?" Although the famous wine's record was precious, it couldn't be compared to a bottle of peerless wine. Hearing Ji Dong say that he actually had 2 bottles of the Source of Life, Du Xikong couldn't help but be overjoyed. At this moment, he was completely immersed in the joy of obtaining a 1,000-year-old Source of Life, but he had never thought that Ji Dong would be willing to take out 2 bottles of such precious wine as a wager. "All right, then it's a deal." Du Xikong stood up, and Ji Dong also stood up. The two of them shook hands and made a bet. The other bartenders sitting in the conference room stood up one after another. They didn't understand why Du Xikong would propose such a wager. Towards Ji Dong, they felt nothing but gratitude in their hearts, and they faintly felt that something was wrong. What was the Source of Life? Most bartenders didn't know. After all, only a few bartenders of the highest level had seen the famous wine's record. There was a trace of cold light in Ji Dong's eyes, which made Du Xikong's heart tremble slightly. But since he had already made a decision, it was too late to regret. He made up his mind. For the Source of Life, he didn't care about his old face anymore. At this time, the staff responsible for preparing for the bartending competition had returned and nodded to Du Xikong. Du Xikong took the opportunity to make a gesture to Hyoheim and said, "Mr. Ji Dong, please. President Du, please." Ji Dong looked at Du Xikong. He actually understood Du Xikong's thoughts at this time. As a top bartender, he immersed himself in bartending all his life. His desire for the peerless wine was stronger than anyone else's. Just like how he couldn't help but taste the 1,000-year-old wine when he was faced with it, so he came to this world. Of course, if it were now, not to mention the 1,000-year-old wine, even the 10,000-year-old wine wouldn't be able to make him drunk. However, as a real bartender, no matter how tempting the wine was, he must keep his heart. Otherwise, his heart would be deterred by external things, and he would never be able to remain calm. Ji Dong even dared to say that Du Xikong, who took the initiative to propose the wager, had already lost half of the game at this time, even if his bartending skills were not inferior to his own. This was because his heart had already lost, and the mentality of biting the hand that fed him would inevitably affect his mood. Under the guidance of the staff, everyone came to a huge room. As soon as they entered the room, the first thing they smelled was the aroma of wine. It was the aroma of at least thousands of kinds of wine mixed together. Although the aroma was not very strong, it would undoubtedly have some impact on bartenders who mainly relied on their sense of smell to judge. In the room, 2 bartending platforms had been set up. Each platform was a perfect semicircle, 1 meter wide and 3.5 meters long. This was the standard bartending table used by bartenders. The semicircle was so that bartenders could easily step back when they were mixing drinks, giving them more space in front of them to display their skills. About 3 meters behind the bartending table, there was a huge wine cabinet. The wine cabinet was so big that it was even a little exaggerated. There were at least thousands of kinds of wine inside. Ji Dong only needed to take a glance to know that the wine on the wine cabinet was all aged. In other words, there was no ordinary base wine. Every bottle was expensive, and at least 1/3 of them were ones that he had never seen since he came to this world. Just like the Magician Guild had a rich foundation in magic weapons and equipment, the Bartenders Guild also had a strong foundation in the accumulation of wine. Even after being robbed by the demonic alliance, they could still take out so many good wines. It could be imagined that the Bartenders Guild definitely used more than one place to store wine, and it was not only in this guild. 10 meters away from the 2 bartending tables and wine cabinets, there was a circle of chairs for watching the ceremony. The whole room was brightly lit, and the huge crystal palace lantern above their heads illuminated every bottle of wine on the 2 bartending tables and wine cabinets. Chapter 286. Looking at the bartending competition venue, Ji Dong finally understood that Du Sikong was not trying to take advantage of him out of modesty. From the arrangement of the thousands of expensive wines, he could tell that Du Sikong was determined to win. There was no doubt that as the president of the Bartenders Guild, he must be very familiar with these wines. The positions on the wine cabinets were definitely the most suitable for him. Such an advantage indeed needed to be balanced through a competition. Du Sikong took off his coat and handed it to an old bartender. His expression had become solemn. What surprised Ji Dong was that Du Sikong was clearly feeling guilty and ashamed before, but when he saw the thousands of wines on the bartending table and the wine cabinets, all his emotions were replaced by fanaticism. It was a state that only bartenders at their level could understand. There was nothing but wine. Ji Dong realized that he had underestimated the god of wine. He saw the shadow of himself before he came to this world in Du Sikong. The title of the god of wine was indeed well-deserved. He originally thought that the change in Du Sikong's mood would affect the bartending competition, but now it seemed that he had worried too much. However, this was also the situation that Ji Dong hoped to see the most. After all, when he first came to this world, he had heard of the name of the god of wine, Du Sikong. It could be said that before he came to this world, Du Sikong was the number 1 bartender in the 5 Elements continent. If this number 1 was defeated so easily, what would be the point of it? As the god of wine, in a sense, he and Du Sikong were the same kind of people. They had absolute confidence in their bartending skills. As a bartender at the peak of his career, he would never lose this confidence. At this moment, he could finally compete with Du Sikong in a real sense. It was also because of Du Sikong's gaze that the little bit of unhappiness in Ji Dong's heart disappeared. The god of wine in front of him was willing to risk the burden of biting the hand that fed him to fight for the source of life. It could be seen how persistent he was towards wine. For wine, he could even give up everything, including his own reputation. Such a bartender was definitely worthy of respect. Du Sikong made a gesture of invitation to Hyoheim and walked behind another bartending table. The light in his eyes became more and more intense. For many years, he had never felt such pressure in the bartending world. Now, the feeling was finally back. For him, this feeling was wonderful and what he was looking forward to. Only under such pressure could he fully display his bartending skills and even make a breakthrough. Of course, he did not think that this pressure was brought by Ji Dong. Instead, it was his desire for the 1,000-year-old source of life. No matter how weak Ji Dong's bartending skills were, he would definitely do his best today to let the source of life fall into the hands of him and the Bartenders Guild without any regret. Ji Dong walked to the bartending table opposite Du Sikong and stood still. The two looked into each other's eyes. Du Sikong was surprised to find that although he did not see the same passion and persistence in Ji Dong's eyes, what he saw was unparalleled confidence, absolute confidence. His calm and clear eyes were bottomless, but he was not nervous at all. His whole person looked so calm. "Mr. Ji Dong, please suggest a way to compete," Du Sikong said in a deep voice. Ji Dong said, "Since it's a competition, we should show our bartending skills in all aspects. How about this? Let's have 3 matches to determine the winner. 2 wins out of 3, what do you think?" Du Sikong nodded and said, "No matter what kind of competition it is, I will let you decide." "All right." Ji Dong's eyes lit up. Just like Du Sikong, he had not felt this excited about bartending for a long time, even when he was facing Fury the Thunder Emperor. At that time, the tie between him and Fury was caused by himself. Although Fury's bartending skills were strong, there was still a slight gap between them. For a real top-notch bartender, even a slight gap was an insurmountable gap. Du Sikong, who was standing before him, represented the world's top bartending skills. Moreover, he had the Flaming Bar watching him. This bartending was also his gift to the Flaming Bar. He and the Flaming Bar were fated to be together because of bartending, so how could he not give it his all? For the first round, we will mix drinks with a single bottle. Each of us will choose our own base wine and ingredient. For the second round, we will compete with multiple bottles. Similarly, we will choose our own base wine and ingredient. For the last round, we will mix a glass of wine for each other to imitate. What do you think? After listening to Ji Dong's suggestion, Du Sikong's pupils contracted. It was not because Ji Dong's suggestion was harsh. On the contrary, the three methods Ji Dong suggested were the most common and fairest methods among bartenders. Was he really that confident? Du Sikong took a deep breath. He could faintly feel that this young man in front of him might really be unique in bartending. However, how could he not be confident in himself? He was a genius bartender. From the time he entered the Bartenders Guild to becoming the god of wine, it only took him 10 years. For the past 30 years, no one in the bartending industry could surpass him. Naturally, no one could shake his position as the president of the Bartenders Guild. Alright, then let's begin. Du Sikong did not say much. Feeling the heat and intense excitement in his body, he had completely entered the zone. The bartenders around them all widened their eyes. Du Ming and Du Xian also knew that they could no longer interfere with the competition, so they just watched quietly from the side. Only the Flaming Bar slowly walked to a place not far from Ji Dong's mixing table. She stared at him through the veil of her bamboo hat. Apart from Ji Dong himself, she was the only one present who had absolute confidence in Ji Dong. Almost at the same time, Ji Dong and Du Sikong walked to the hand sanitizer next to their respective mixing tables and began to wash their hands seriously. Their palms, fingers, fingernails, and even every grain on their hands were carefully cleaned. If an outsider were to see them washing their hands like this, they would definitely snort in disgust. However, all the senior bartenders present understood that washing their hands was not only a sign of respect for bartending, but also to prevent any odor from affecting their judgment of the wine. Only with clean hands could one maintain the perfect fit and friction with the mixing pot. Who would be careless in such a high-level competition? Almost at the same time, they finished washing their hands and returned to their mixing tables at the same time. Both of them took out an identical crystal mixing pot. Since it was a fair competition, the competition was about techniques and bartending skills, not bartending tools. Therefore, all the tools used in this competition were exactly the same. Up until this moment, everything that the two gods of wine had done was practically a mirror image. Their eyes met, and in the next moment, they began their first round of mixing at the same time. Du Sikong did not even need to use his eyes to see clearly the position of each bottle in the liquor cabinet behind him. This was what he was best at, and it was also the position of his liquor cabinet. Without turning his head, he swung his arm backward as if it was broken. In a flash, 3 bottles of wine appeared on the mixing table in front of him. However, to Du Sikong's surprise, Ji Dong did not turn his head either. He did not even move his hand. 3 faint red lights flashed, and 3 bottles of wine appeared on the mixing table in front of him. These 3 bottles were exactly the same as Du Sikong's. However, Du Sikong did not think about how Ji Dong had done it. At this moment, Ji Dong was no longer in his eyes, only the 3 bottles of wine in front of him. Like Du Sikong, Ji Dong's gaze fell on the 3 bottles of wine. This was the first time he had seen the liquor cabinet behind him, but when he swept his gaze over it, His mental strength, which had undergone 10 rounds of metamorphosis, had firmly remembered the position of each bottle. The reason why he had chosen the same wine as Du Sikong was because he wanted to compete with his opponent in the same bartending. The 3 base wines that Du Sikong had chosen were vodka, Cointreau orange-flavored wine, and almond brandy. These were 3 completely different wines. Vodka was similar to filtered alcohol mixed with purified water. It did not have any additional taste and was widely used as a base wine. However, it was only used to dilute other base wines and condiments to produce a supplementary effect. Cointreau orange-flavored wine was also known as Cointreau orange-flavored liqueur. It had the sweet and sour taste of oranges, and was a type of liqueur that was the core ingredient of many famous cocktails. To obtain the perfect Cointreau, one had to distill the essence of the sweet and bitter orange peel, and then mix it with high-quality alcohol, sugar, and water. Finally, the final product would be an absolute premium wine with an alcohol content of 40%. The entire process was carefully selected to ensure the purity and moderate taste. As a result, Cointreau's taste was very unique. It was mellow and rich. Although the mixture was balanced, it was strong yet gentle, cool yet warm, and bitter yet sweet. It was a refreshing taste experience. When it was poured into the glass for the first time, it presented a sparkling and translucent luster. However, after adding ice, it would turn milky white, accompanied by a light floral and fruity fragrance, followed by a thick orange fragrance. The overall feeling was cool, subtle, and complicated, lingering for a long time. Obviously, there was a fixed gap between Ji Dong and Du Sikong, and that was the latter did not possess the ability to make ice. This was a congenital disadvantage. But even without opening the bottle, Ji Dong could feel the absolute perfection of this bottle of Cointreau. The last base wine was almond brandy. Most brandy referred to distilled wine, but this almond brandy was a distilled wine made from almonds. It was more complicated to make, but it also had a unique taste. The strong taste carried a faint almond aroma. Although it wasn't as famous as the Jundo orange-flavored wine, there was no doubt that it was an exceptional fine wine. It was just that it would never appear alone as a base wine. 3 different base wines with different tastes and origins naturally brought about ever-changing cocktails. Bartenders could use different techniques to create different results. Next, the staff had already sent the ingredients to Ji Dong and Du Sikong. They didn't even need to be told, as the staff of the Bartender Guild knew exactly what to mix with the same ingredients. There were 2 ingredients: red pomegranate syrup and special grape juice. The cocktail made from these 3 base wines and 2 ingredients was the famous Midnight Sunshine. It was also a cocktail that Ji Dong had made for the Flaming Bar in the past. Perhaps it was because of telepathy this was one of the cocktails that Ji Dong wanted to choose in the first round. Since Du Sikong had chosen it, there was no reason for Ji Dong to choose anything else. The bottle cap was opened at the same time. Both Ji Dong and Du Sikong's hands were very steady. 4/10 of vodka, 2/10 of Cointreau, 2/10 of almond brandy, 1/10 of red pomegranate syrup, and 1/10 of lemon juice. There was no difference in the amount that they added into the bottle, and not a single drop fell on the mixing table. The mixture of 3 different base liquors and 2 different ingredients sparkled in the crystal mixer under the light from outside. The murky liquid mixed with each other. The moment the bottle cap was closed, both Ji Dong and Du Sikong stopped moving. Surprisingly, they appeared in the mirror again and closed their eyes at the same time. Everyone could not help but become nervous at this moment, because they knew that this pinnacle duel was finally about to begin. The mirror was broken in the next moment. Both of them raised their hands almost at the same time. The difference was that Ji Dong only raised his right hand, while Du Sikong raised both of his hands. Ji Dong's right hand swept towards the bottom of the crystal mixer like lightning. In an instant there was a flash of brilliance, and the mixer spun rapidly in the air. However, what Du Sikong did was completely different. He pressed both of his hands towards the mixer in the air, and two dense streams of black water magic surged out, one in front and one behind. Under the effect of these two streams of magic, the mixer spun rapidly on the mixing table like a spinning top. From the beginning of the duel, both of them displayed their completely different mixing styles. Ji Dong mainly relied on his pure skills, while Du Sikong, the god of wine, combined his mixing skills with his magic. At this moment, the curtains of this battle for the title of the god of wine began. Until this moment, only the person from the flaming bar believed that Ji Dong would definitely win. Among the others, only Du Ming had some confidence in Ji Dong. The same mixer, the same mixture, at this moment, began to blossom with dazzling brilliance. Chapter 287. The real battle between Ji Dong and Du Song had begun. Both of their shakers moved at the same time. Ji Dong's shaker was swept into the air and spun at a high speed, while Du Song's shaker spun like a top on the mixing counter under the influence of his water element magic. There was no doubt that Du Song, the god of wine, had the upper hand from the beginning. Not only did he combine his magic with his bartending skills, but he also made better use of the mixing counter. Of course, this was just the beginning. The so-called advantage was just a momentary change. Ji Dong didn't use any magic. His right hand had already chased after the shaker in the air. He opened his palm, and the moment his hand touched the shaker, it was as if the shaker was glued to his hand. The rapidly spinning shaker stuck to his palm, shining with a dazzling light. Every bartender watching the battle felt their vision blur. They didn't even see how Ji Dong did it. 3 balls of silver light appeared in the air. It was the 3 suns mirroring the moon. Bartenders under the level of 6 stars couldn't do such a simple trick. On the other hand, Du Song's shaker had also risen into the air. Du Song didn't touch the shaker with his hand. Instead, his fingers moved in a strange rhythm. Under his skillful control, the water element magic pulled the shaker up from the mixing counter and spun it in the air. The transparent crystal shaker and the rapidly fusing liquor looked like a whirlpool in the air under the cover of the black magic. The strange scene was no weaker than Ji Dong's 3 suns mirroring the moon. From the very beginning, the 2 gods of wine had been competing with each other. Their gazes were focused, and they didn't even glance at each other. Their gazes were completely focused on their own flask. Their will and spirit were all focused on the pinnacle of this bartending battle. 3 turned into 9. The 3 balls of silver light in Ji Ye's hands instantly changed. He finally raised his left hand. No one could see his movements clearly anymore. They could only see countless illusory shadows of his hands and illusionary halos flickering in the air. The silver shaker and the red mixed wine spun rapidly in the air, forming a strange scene of a red sun shining with silver radiance. The sunlight flowed from left to right, completing the entire process from sunrise to sunset. 9 bright and beautiful suns blossomed in the air. 3 and 9 were 2 different numbers. When used in bartending, it wasn't as simple as 3 times. Even an 8-star bartender couldn't guarantee that he could turn 3 into 9. Especially when the 9 balls of sunlight seemed to be frozen in the air. There wasn't a single flicker or illusion as they shone on Ji Dong's sturdy body. Other than his arms, Ji Dong's body didn't sway at all. Even his eyes were calm and confident. It was as if the arms that were performing such a strange bartending skill didn't belong to him at all. 9 suns in the sky was definitely a top-notch bartending skill in the bartending world. Moreover, Ji Dong executed it perfectly. Even the most picky bartender wouldn't be able to find any flaws in it. At this moment, the bartenders of the Bartenders Guild finally realized that Ji Dong didn't come with good intentions. They also understood why he dared to challenge Du Sikong. Just based on the 9 suns in the sky, he was fully qualified to do so. Among the bartenders, there was the one who rejected Ji Dong at the door when he first came to the Bartenders Guild. At this moment, this bartender wanted to find a hole to hide in. However, to the people of the Bartenders Guild, they couldn't understand how Ji Dong was able to execute such a magical bartending skill at such a young age. Most importantly, he didn't use any mana when he executed the skill. If it wasn't for the fact that Ji Dong was using the identity of the enforcement elder of the Magician Guild, these bartenders could even imagine that once he joined the Bartenders Guild, he would definitely be the successor of the god of wine, Du Sikong. Even if he lost today's competition, the second god of wine would be born. Among the crowd, the one who was the most pleased was Du Ming. This wasn't the first time he had seen Ji Dong display his bartending skills, but he could clearly feel that today's Ji Dong was completely different from the last time he demonstrated his bartending skills to him. At that time, Ji Dong was completely at his fingertips and had already conquered him. This time, his teacher was obviously going all out. The 9 suns in the sky that was completely flawless was so perfect and moving. Du Ming was completely sure that if it was his father, it would be difficult for him to achieve the same level as Ji Dong without using mana and technique. Among the crowd, the one who was the most surprised was Du Exhilarating, who was beside Du Ming. Seeing Ji Dong's calm display of peerless skills, she was completely stunned. Before this moment, she had always thought that Ji Dong and her father's bartending competition was a joke. Only now did she understand that the real joke was not Ji Dong, but herself. Although Du Exhilarating wasn't very interested in bartending and didn't take the path of a bartender, as the daughter of the god of wine, she had seen too many bartending techniques since she was young. She had seen Du Sikong bartending more times than her brother Du Ming, so she naturally understood how powerful the bartending technique Ji Dong was. Could it be that he was a perfect person? Du Exhilarating suddenly realized that her heart was beating very fast. If it was said that she was more interested in Ji Dong than out of gratitude, then at this moment, she was truly attracted by this young man who had an unknown amount of background. She knew that she would never be able to forget Ji Dong who was bartending. He wasn't handsome, but she had never seen another man with such a temperament. If she were to give up on such a man, she would definitely regret it for the rest of her life. Ji Dong didn't know that in this bartending competition, he had conquered another girl's heart. When Ji Dong's 3 suns turn into 9 and 9 suns in the sky was displayed, there was also a strange change on the side of the god of wine Du Sikong. The black water magic in his hand suddenly elongated into a ribbon of light in the air. The black light unfolded like a scroll, and the bartending pot rotated on its own in the unfolded scroll. Every time it rotated rapidly, the bartending pot itself would flash once. When it flashed for the 9th time, all the black water magic shattered in an instant. In the air, the bartending pot disappeared, and so did Du Sikong's hands. At a speed that was almost as fast as Ji Dong's, countless black ribbons of light instantly gathered above his head. The temperature in the air slowly dropped, like the change from day to night. The sky within a diameter of 3 meters above Du Sikong's head also darkened. The lights on the roof were completely blocked by the black water magic, just like the night sky. In the night sky, silver crescent moons began to appear. There were a total of 9 crescent moons, and they formed a circle in the sky. They fluctuated strangely, and within these crescent moons, a faint red light shone. This was one of Du Sikong's best bartending skills. With the perfect combination of his skills and magic, the descent of the blood moon, the 9 heavenly tribulations, that strange, cold, and even somewhat terrifying aura quietly flickered in the red moonlight against the black background. That was an arc-shaped crescent moon, not a full moon. In terms of difficulty and skill, at this moment, Du Sikong had completely surpassed Ji Dong's 9 suns in the sky. Everything he did was much more complicated and difficult than Ji Dong's 3 suns turn into 9 and 9 suns in the sky. Although he was using his own magic, to be able to complete such a strange scene, the control, powerful hand speed, and precise control required were all at the peak of the peak. When the blood moon descended and the 9 heavenly tribulations appeared, Ji Dong and Du Sikong raised their heads at almost the same time and looked at each other. They had clearly seen the techniques that both of them had used. The difference was that Ji Dong's eyes were still calm and clear, while Du Sikong's eyes were filled with admiration. At this moment, he had completely understood that everything that Du Ming had told him before was true. This young man in front of him, who had the prestige of a law enforcement elder of the Magicians' Guild, had definitely reached the level of a master in bartending. Looking at Ji Dong's 9 suns in the sky, Du Sikong couldn't help but secretly admire him. Not to mention that he was 20 years old. Even if he was 30 years old, he definitely wouldn't be able to reach the level that Ji Dong had displayed at this moment. However, these thoughts flashed through Du Sikong's mind in an instant. Although in his heart, he had a completely new understanding of Ji Dong's bartending skills, and even acknowledged it, he was very clear that he had already won the first round of bartending. The competition between bartenders was decided by many aspects. Technique, and technique was one of them. His technique was already completely above his opponent. Moreover, he had the ability to make ice that his opponent couldn't reach. In terms of taste and appearance, he couldn't lose to his opponent. Victory was inevitable. From Du Sikong's eyes, one could already see the pride that belonged to the god of wine. As the blood moon descended, Du Sikong pushed the 9 tribulations technique to the limit. Crescent moons fell quietly, like moonlight falling from the sky. 9 layers of red light flashed, and finally ended on the bartending table. At the same time, all the darkness descended and completely covered the bartending table, fully demonstrating the darkness of the 9 tribulations. If Du Sikong were to evaluate his bartending skills, he would definitely say that it was perfect. At least in the past 5 years, this was the bartending session he had done to his heart's content. It was also the bartending session he had used to his best level. Under the pressure of Ji Dong and the source of life, he felt like he had returned to the peak of bartending. However, just as Du Sikong's 9 crescent moons overlapped on the bartending counter, the rapidly spinning bartending pot gradually stabilized under his control. At the same time, it even emitted a faint chill. At this moment, his gaze suddenly froze. This was because, right in front of him, the 9 suns controlled by his opponent had changed. Du Sikong's biggest mistake was that he had underestimated Ji Dong. To Ji Dong, 9 suns in the sky was not the end of his technique, but only the beginning. Once again, Du Ming saw that magical scene unfold. 9 high-pitched dragon roars sounded almost at the same time. Within the cadence, the 9 dragon roars resounded in different tones. Every tone was so clear, as if there were really 9 giant dragons gathered here. However, every bartender present knew that those weren't dragon roars, but the sound produced by the vibration of the bartending pot. At the same time, the 9 neatly arranged suns around Ji Dong moved at the same time. In midair, they transformed into 9 dazzling streams of red light. Every stream of red light was so eye-catching, and under the illumination of the chandeliers on the ceiling, they shone with a dazzling brilliance. The dragon roars became more and more impassioned. Amidst the excited dragon roars, a red bead appeared in front of Ji Dong. At the same time, the 9 streaks of red light formed by the 9 brilliant suns dispersed at the same time. At the same time, they transformed into the shape of a dragon and danced around the red bead. Du Sikong's gaze was dull. His hand movements had already been practiced over and over again. He had completed his bartending in the first round of the competition, but Ji Dong's magical technique of transforming 9 suns in the sky into 9 dragons playing with a pearl had just been displayed. That's right, 9 suns in the sky couldn't compare to Du Sikong's descent of the blood moon, but what if 9 dragons playing with a pearl was added to the mix? Du Sikong's forehead was already covered in cold sweat. One had to know that everything Ji Dong had done was done completely with his technique. But was this really something a human could do? As the god of wine, Du Sikong could move his fingers at least 30 to 50 times in a second. When he reached his limit, he could even move more than 60 times. Just like when he completed the descent of the blood moon, he could reach this level at the climax. However, how fast would the 9 dragons playing with a pearl need to be to support it? Moreover, his 60 times per second could only be achieved with the support of mana. He could display the effect of nearly 100 times per second to produce a bartending effect. However, Du Sikong had no confidence that he could complete the 9 dragons playing with a pearl that Ji Dong had just demonstrated. This technique was so complicated that Du Sikong only needed to take a look at it to have any ideas. Chapter 288. The 9 dragons playing with a pearl was too complicated. Every dancing red dragon in front of Ji Dong looked so clear, and he could even vaguely see a scale-like halo. Du Sikong understood that this technique required at least 200 repetitions of rhythm, which was something he could never hope to achieve. However, Ji Dong managed to do it without using any magic to coordinate it. Seeing Ji Dong complete the 9 dragons playing with a pearl, Du Sikong's understanding of bartending was fundamentally overturned. He always thought that the combination of technique and magic was the true pinnacle of bartending. This was also the point of contention between him and his son. Du Ming firmly believed that pure technique was the king of bartending, and that the threshold of entry should not be linked to magic. However, he was only a 6-star bartender after all, and he could not bring out enough evidence to convince Du Sikong. However, at this moment, Ji Dong managed to do it. This was the first time Du Sikong saw the pinnacle of technique. Without a doubt, the speed of Ji Dong's hands had reached an unimaginable level. If this was in his previous life, Ji Dong would not have been able to do this. The 9 dragons playing with a pearl technique in his previous life could only do 3 dragons at most, and that was already his pinnacle. However, the current him was different. After the torture of the flying serpent, he had a strong flexibility that ordinary people could not hope to achieve. Any reverse joints would not be a problem for him. Moreover, he had added some of the mysteries of the flying serpent flash into this technique, which allowed his hands to move at maximum speed. Last time, when he performed the 9 dragons playing with a pearl in front of Du Ming, he failed at the last moment. However, this time, he was fully focused, and his mental strength could finally keep up with the speed of his fingers. How could he fail again? Finally, when the 9 red dragons pounced on the red pearl in the center in the same posture, all the light converged at the same time, and Ji Dong's hands and arms finally appeared at this moment. The halo solidified, and with a soft sound, countless fine silver powders scattered in all directions, turning into a circle of silver halo, just like the light emitted from the red pearl. Did the shaker break? Everyone was shocked at the same time. Even though the bartenders of the Bartenders Guild were hoping that their president would win, they didn't want the magical scene that had just unfolded in front of them to end in failure. However, in the next moment, their eyes almost fell out of their sockets. That's right, the shaker in Ji Dong's hand had indeed shattered. Just like the last time, the crystal shaker finally couldn't withstand Ji Dong's high-speed attacks and shattered at the last moment. However, this time, it didn't scatter in all directions. Instead, it spread evenly. Without a doubt, this was all under Ji Dong's control. How could this be? How did he do it? Although the shaker had shattered, not a single drop of wine escaped from Ji Dong's control. The red pearl in his hand shone brightly, and the rich fragrance of the wine, which was filled with at least 10 different flavors, quietly spread out. Every bartender who smelled this fragrance couldn't help but take in deep breath. Could the 5 ingredients from midnight sunlight really be able to create such a wonderful aroma? They could even feel that the fragrance of the wine was constantly changing with each breath they took and the next breath they took. Only bartenders who were 8 stars and above, including Du Ming, could sense the magic of this aroma. The one who felt it the most was naturally the god of wine, Du Sikong. Du Sikong never thought that Ji Dong would be able to combine all the different flavors of wine in this shaker and display it to everyone's taste buds in the form of an aroma. The same shaker of wine, after being mixed in the same way, wouldn't taste much different, no matter how good the bartender's skills were. However, when the aroma mixed with the air, it brought about a completely different feeling. Du Sikong never thought that a bartender could display his bartending skills through aroma. The confidence in his eyes was gradually crumbling. Was this really a miracle? At this moment, thump, 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 sounds suddenly rang out. The sounds were muffled, but each sound was extremely clear. The red ball of light in Ji Dong's hand, which was the wine that had been concocted, quietly deformed under the wind created by his palms. Oh my God! Du Xian had already covered her mouth. Ah Jin's eyes were dull, as if he had seen an eternity. Above Ji Dong's palm, the round ball of light had actually turned into a red heart. Changing the shape of the shaker was not just limited to being round. This was Du Sikong's ultimate skill. At this moment, he realized that Ji Dong could do the same. Moreover, he didn't rely on the shaker at all. He used the wine blessing to accomplish all this. What was even more bizarre was that the red heart actually changed size with the thumping sound. It really did seem like a human heart that was beating continuously. Ji Dong turned around, and with this red heart and that illusory figure, he walked to the side of the bartender table, which was the closest to him, raging flame. At this moment, the look in his eyes finally changed. It was a deep love and a deep smile. The hands of the flaming bar covered her mouth, just like Du Xian did. Her perfect eyes, hidden behind the veil, were already filled with tears. She still clearly remembered that Ji Dong had also turned the shaker into a red heart at the Heavenly Stem Academy's ball. Later on, it was broken by Ji Feng. It was also because of that incident that Ji Dong's fate changed. He left the Heavenly Stem Academy and suffered great danger. Compared to that time, wasn't this heart even more perfect at this moment? Ji Dong was no longer the Ji Dong of the past. Compared to before, his strength had undergone a tremendous change. However, what remained unchanged was his persistent and fiery heart. His heart could only contain the flaming bar. The red heart floated quietly in front of the flaming bar. Ji Dong didn't say anything, but the thumping of the heart surpassed any words of love. In front of everyone in the Bartenders Guild, Ji Dong used his near-perfect bartending skills to once again express his love to the flaming bar. This was a bartending technique that he had long thought of, and today it was finally realized. The red heart turned into a stream of light and flew towards the flaming bar under Ji Dong's control. At this moment, he finally used his magic, but not to bartend, but to give his heart to the woman he loved the most. After the red light entered the veil, Ji Dong's heart sank into the braid of the flaming bar's lips. The faint red light quietly disappeared. This was a perfect ending. You've already accepted my heart. You won't have the chance to regret it in the future. Ji Dong held the flaming bar's hand with trembling hands. Even with his strong physique, he couldn't help but tremble after performing such a difficult bartending technique like the 9 dragons playing with pearls. The flaming bar's hand was also trembling. The fragrance of the midnight sun, or the scent of Ji Dong's heart, filled every inch of her body. Her heart was completely filled with this scent and Ji Dong's heart. To her, this was a perfect eternity, an eternity that she could never forget. Holding Ji Dong's hand tightly, the flaming bar couldn't say a word. She didn't know if it was because of the passion in Ji Dong's heart, or because Ji Dong's love had melted all her words in her heart. Holding the flaming bar's hand, Ji Dong turned around and faced Du Sikong. With a satisfied smile, he said, "President Du, I admit defeat in the first round. This is because the cocktail I made can't be tasted by anyone other than her." In a duel between bartenders, techniques and the style of the cocktail were very important. However, the final winner was still the taste. Ji Dong refused to let anyone taste his heart. This was also what he had planned for a long time. It further proved that he had absolute confidence in his bartending skills. Even if he lost the first round, so what? Du Sikong pressed his hands on the counter. The liquor in the flask in front of him finally stopped spinning. There was no trace of impurities in the crystal-clear liquor. All the impurities had been purified by his techniques and magic during the mixing process. There was no doubt that this was a perfect cocktail. The perfect midnight sunshine. Even the temperature of the cocktail was just right. However, did he really win? No, I lost. Although you refused to let me taste the cocktail you made, the aroma just now was enough to prove everything. I lost the first round, be it the process or the result. I admit that I really wanted to help the guild win that bottle of Source of Life. For this, I can disregard my own reputation. However, as a bartender, I can't let my dignity as a bartender be tarnished. A loss is a loss. Du Sikong's words were very calm. Although his heart was not calm, he spoke his mind. That's right. No matter how much he wanted to get the Source of Life, he would never trade his dignity as a bartender for it. If that was the case, he would no longer be the god of wine. He would no longer have the courage to pick up the flask and continue to compete with Ji Dong. Ji Dong's mixing technique of 9 suns in the sky, 9 dragons playing with pearls, and finally heart melting had conquered everyone present. No one had any objections to Du Sikong's words. Ji Dong gently shook his head and said, "No, President Du Sikong, I can't take advantage of you. Our competition is fair. It's because of me that I can't let you taste my drink. Bartenders also have their own rules. If I don't abide by them, then I'm not worthy to be a bartender, and I'm not worthy to be your opponent. Please help me." Ji Dong gently shook his head and said, "Du Sikong, I cannot take advantage of you." Right at this moment, Du Exhilarating suddenly said, "You guys don't have to fight anymore. This first round is considered a draw. In terms of technique and taste, it should be Dad who lost, but in terms of purpose, Big Brother Ji Dong did not win either. If it wasn't for the sake of making this cup of wine for this sister, he might not have been able to perform as perfectly as before, which also meant that he would not give his own wine to others to drink. Therefore, this first round is considered a draw, which is absolutely fair, even though Big Brother Ji Dong suffered a little, but it should be the result that both of you can accept." At this moment, Du Exhilarating's eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. She really envied the flaming bar. How she wished that heart could be sent to her. Girls liked romance the most, and how could a girl like her, who had just awakened to love, be an exception? At this moment, she was looking at Ji Dong's sunlight, and even Ji Dong was frowning a little. It was completely a dazzling starlight. However, although Du Exhilarating looked a little infatuated, what she said was completely acceptable to Ji Dong and Du Sikong. Du Sikong did not say anything. Instead, he watched as Hyoheim moved, because he knew that even so, he had already taken advantage of her. Ji Dong smiled and said, "If President Du has no objections, we can consider it a draw. This way we can ensure that our 3 matches are completed. What do you think, President Du?" Du Sikong nodded and said, "All right, since that's the case, I won't be polite. Shall we start the second round directly, or shall we take a short break?" Ji Dong's gaze fell on the mixer in front of Du Sikong and said, "There's no hurry to start. I haven't tasted the wine that President Du has made yet. I wonder if that's okay?" Du Sikong made a gesture of invitation and said, "Of course." After this first match, his absolute confidence had been shaken. He knew very well that if Ji Dong was willing to let him taste the cocktail just now, he would have already lost the first round. He had really underestimated this young man. He didn't know if he could say that Ji Dong's previous bartending was a miracle, but everything that Ji Dong had displayed was even more shocking to him than when Ji Dong had displayed the intermediate ultimate skill. After all, he himself was far from reaching the level of the ultimate skill, but he was the best at bartending. It would be uncomfortable for anyone to be suppressed in the field that he was best at, but this also stimulated his fighting spirit. When he opened the mixer, a fragrant aroma immediately floated out. Du Sikong personally took out 3 highball glasses and divided the wine in the mixer into 3 portions. The flaming bar didn't step forward because she didn't want to taste any kind of wine at this time. Her whole body and mind were immersed in Ji Dong's heart just now. Ji Dong made a gesture to Ajin and the two stepped forward. Ji Dong's nose was excited and his face was moved. He said, "Good wine." In his previous life, he was not only a master bartender, but also a master of wine tasting. The 6 senses tasting method that he had created shocked the world. At this time, just by looking with his eyes and smelling with his nose, he could already feel a lot of things. It was also midnight sunlight. Perhaps the wine that Du Sikong made was not as varied as his, but it was pure. The absolutely pure midnight sunlight perfectly blended the taste of the 3 base wines and the 2 ingredients into a single taste. This ability was not inferior to his 100 flavors at all. Chapter 289. The wine that Du Sikong mixed was characterized by its purity, without any impurities. When the wine was poured into the glass, it was already covered with a faint layer of ice mist. Ji Dong picked up the glass and took a sip. Suddenly, the cold wine filled his mouth, and the rich complex aroma instantly exploded in his mouth. The touching feeling in that instant made him intoxicated. The pure taste spread from the tip of his tongue to the root of his tongue, and the taste exploded again and again, bringing him new surprises again and again. Ji Dong clearly knew that if it was him in his previous life, he could only achieve this level at most, or even be inferior. Especially in this glass of wine, the ability to fuse various tastes was not something that he could achieve in his previous life. This was accomplished by Du Sikong with the stimulation of the 9th water magic. There was no doubt that this was definitely a top-notch cocktail. While Ji Dong was tasting, Ajin was also tasting. Her expression had also changed. Although she could not taste wine as clearly as Ji Dong, even those who did not know wine could taste the good of this wine. However, she always felt that although this glass of wine was good, it could not make her intoxicated. In terms of taste, this glass of wine was better than the one that she had drunk before by Ji Dong, but it lacked the feeling that made her feel both physically and mentally intoxicated. Good wine. Chairman Du deserves the title of God of Wine. There was genuine admiration in Ji Dong's eyes. When he first learned of Du Sikong's title of God of Wine, he completely snorted. At that time, he had just come to this world and did not think that there was anyone in this world who could compare with him in bartending skills. However, he clearly realized that Du Sikong was indeed a bartender of the same level as him. If he could be 20 or 30 years younger and more creative, perhaps he would be his goal. Du Sikong downed the extra glass of wine in one gulp. The ice-cold cocktail brought with it a surge of alcohol, causing his face to have an additional layer of red. It was also with the help of this glass of wine that the passion in his eyes was reignited. "Mr. Ji Dong, let's start the second round of the competition." He didn't dare to think back to how Ji Dong looked like when he was mixing the wine. Whenever he thought of that godly technique, his confidence would be greatly affected. He drank this cup of wine to numb himself with alcohol, allowing his mind to be more focused. Even if he wanted to think, he would have to finish today's competition first. He would no longer underestimate Ji Dong, and would definitely give it his all. Okay. After Ji Dong returned to his bartending table, the two looked at each other, showing some appreciation for each other. After cleaning their hands again, they placed one glass of wine after another on the bartending table. Every time they placed an extra glass on the table, the surrounding bartenders couldn't help but narrow their eyes. They all understood how difficult it was to mix drinks with more than one glass of wine. Different cocktails required different technique. There was no doubt that in this second round, Ji Dong and Du Sikong would not mix the same cocktail twice. Therefore, with each additional glass of wine, the difficulty increased exponentially. Soon, both sides took out their 9th glass of wine. In the bartending industry, Using 9 glasses of wine to mix 9 cocktails at the same time was called the 9 lotus lamp. It was an ultimate technique. Every bartender present was extremely excited. To be able to see 2 9 lotus lamps appear at the same time, for them, how lucky was it? They were all looking forward to the continuation of this pinnacle duel. If they thought that they would see a complete victory in the first round, then in the second round, everyone's eyes were wide open and they were completely focused. They were afraid that they would miss a single detail. They didn't want to let themselves have any regrets. At that moment, Du Sikong's hand reached under the bartending table for the 10th time. Amidst the gasps of the bartenders, he took out the 10th glass of wine. This was only 1 more glass. However, adding another glass to the limit of 9 was a completely different experience. What shocked the bartenders even more had yet to come. Ji Dong did the same thing. On the bartending table in front of him, there was an additional 10th glass of wine. Du Sikong's eyes narrowed. He hesitated for a moment, then his hand reached under the table again. The 11th glass. The bartenders were so nervous that they almost couldn't breathe. Many of their minds had gone blank. Even those 8-star bartenders were still training hard to add an 8th bartender, but Du Sikong was already able to add an 11th bartender? However, the next moment, the room was filled with gasps of surprise. Ji Dong didn't stop either. However, this time, he took out 3 more bottles. Adding the 10 from before, there were 13 in total. Du Sikong's eyes also froze. 11 was the limit of what he could do. He needed to use all his mana to support it. He had once thought that if his mana could increase to the level of 8 crowns, he might be able to add 1 more glass. However, Ji Dong actually took out 13. That was a whole 13. Du Sikong's hand didn't reach under the bartending table anymore. Instead, he quietly watched Ji Dong. If he added 1 more glass, his mixing skills would collapse. It was very likely that he wouldn't be able to make the last bottle. Can you really do it? Du Sikong asked with difficulty. The light of confidence in Ji Dong's eyes didn't diminish at all. He said, yes. Du Sikong took a deep breath. All right, I think I don't need to embarrass myself anymore. As long as Mr. Ji Dong can prove that you can make 13 cocktails at the same time, I'm willing to admit defeat. Ji Dong nodded. President Du, there's one thing I need to make clear first. I won't easily let others drink the cocktails I make. Of course, you can, but I've made up my mind a long time ago to make different types of cocktails every day. I won't do it more than 3 times a day. So, how about this? I'll mix cocktails at the same time, but I won't use alcohol. I'll let you clearly see the different techniques I use. Du Sikong looked at Ji Dong and said in a low voice, the difficulty is completely different whether there's alcohol in the bottle or not. Mr. Ji Dong should understand this. Even though the difference isn't that big, I'm confident that I can still use 13 empty bottles. Ji Dong smiled. What if it's like this? As he said that, he moved his hands to the counter. In the next moment, there were 5 more bottles on the counter. In addition to the 13 from before, there were a total of 18 bottles. That's impossible. Du Sikong's body trembled slightly. He looked at Ji Dong with eyes full of shock. Ji Dong said, President Du, this isn't the first time you've said this to me. I've always believed that nothing is impossible. 18 bottles to make 18 different cocktails. I'll name them the 18 Arhats 18 turns. As he said that, Ji Dong waved his hands lightly, and the 18 bottles were neatly arranged together. He looked around and said in a clear voice, although I won't be using real alcohol, I believe that everyone here is an expert and can understand my technique. Please remember the order, from 1 to 18, the cocktails I will make are Sunrise, Early Morning, Silver Coast, Red Jade, Sunburn, Afternoon Nap, Angel, Afternoon Death, Masked Devil, Red Dragon, Blue Electric Wave, Frost, 7 Heavens, Halo, Ice and Fire, Eternal Love, Doomsday, Flaming Bar, Burning Passion. Every time he named a cocktail, the bartenders were shocked. This was because every cocktail he chose had a unique mixing technique. It could be said that it required a lot of effort to make each cocktail individually. However, what he was going to do now was to make 18 bottles of cocktails at the same time. This was something that the bartenders of the Bartenders Guild, and even the god of wine Du Sikong, couldn't imagine. President Du, please step aside. Ji Dong waved his hand at Du Sikong. Du Sikong subconsciously dodged to the side. Just as he was about to leave Ji Dong's counter, the heavy counter in front of Ji Dong was kicked away by a loud bang. It was a full 3 meters away. The 18 crystal bottles on the mixing table flew into the air at the same time like 18 rays of light. In the next moment, Du Sikong clearly saw that Ji Dong's eyes had turned white. White flames danced in his eyes, and his hands were burning with the same light. Lead wave bloom. The 18 rays of light were waved almost at the same time. Ji Dong disappeared in front of the bartenders, and in the blink of an eye, 6 figures of him appeared in the air. That's right, there were 6 of him. Apart from the flaming bar, no one could tell which of the 6 figures was the real Ji Dong. The afterimages that were created were extremely clear, and the milky white rays danced in the air at the same time. The 18 mixing bottles seemed to have found their respective owners. Different halos danced in different directions. The bartenders at the side were shocked to find that the 18 mixing bottles were flying in the air according to Ji Dong's method of making the 18 cocktails. Moreover, the order was correct. It started from sunrise and ended with the flaming bars burning passion. The 18 mixing bottles shone with a faint white light. The faint aura of chaos made every bartender extremely focused. At this moment, they had even temporarily stopped breathing. They even covered their mouths, afraid that their screams would affect Ji Dong's unparalleled skills. Is this really a standard that a human can achieve? The 6 figures were a gift that Ji Dong had given him after fusing with the second piece of Heaven Jade. Within this piece of Heaven Jade there was also a skill recorded. It was a mysterious footwork skill called Doppelganger Illusions. Du Sikong's hands and body were trembling. At this moment, he suddenly realized a fact. It wasn't that Ji Dong didn't use his mana to assist him in bartending, nor was it because he couldn't do it, but because he didn't want to. At that moment, what was presented in front of him was still pure skills. There was still not a trace of mana fluctuation from Ji Dong's body, but his exquisite control was obviously based on mana. Although Du Sikong did not know what the white light was, he could faintly feel that the white light played an important role in Ji Dong's mixing. Every mixing bottle was moving up and down in the most perfect trajectory. It looked like there were 6 people mixing the 18 cocktails at the same time. What a unique skill! Just like what Ji Dong had said, every mixing bottle flying in the air was extremely clear. There were no mistakes. No matter which mixing bottle was focused on, even Du Sikong would not be able to find any flaws in Ji Dong's mixing. The miraculous doppelganger footwork was the key to Ji Dong's 18 somersaults of the 18 arhats, but it wasn't the only one. Without the doppelganger, Ji Dong could use his full speed to create afterimages, but he couldn't maintain them for long, and they wouldn't be as clear as they were now. However, it was different now. The afterimages he created were no different from real people. Relying on his incomparably strong spiritual energy and superhuman physique, he had already cultivated the doppelganger to the 3rd level in the short period of time he came into contact with the doppelganger. This doppelganger was also divided into 9 levels, just like the Deity Destroyer Strike. Ji Dong hadn't had the time to test out the Deity Destroyer Strike's improvement after the Flame of Chaos had completely broken through, but these 3 levels of Doppelganger had greatly improved his combat ability, especially in close combat. At this moment, the magical mixing method of these 6 figures was not only the credit of cloning shadows, but also the Dark Moon Dance, Flying Serpent Flash, and other skills that were related to body movements that Ji Dong already knew. With these skills, Ji Dong was able to complete the 18 arhats so perfectly. Conquering. Ji-dong's 18 somersaults of the 18 arhats had conquered everyone present, including the god of wine, Du Sikong. As for Ji-dong himself, he was completely immersed in this wonderful world. A huge amount of mental strength gushed out from the soul vortex. The faint white light around his body and the faint white flame on his hands were not the flame of chaos, but the flame of the soul. The flame of the soul coiled in the soul vortex. After 10 transformations, the pearl of chaos was formed, and the flame of the soul was completely independent, forming a soul vortex. He truly had the ability to control the flame of chaos. In order to complete the magical mixing method of the 18 arhats, Ji-dong had released his mental strength to the fullest, accurately grasping even the most minute details of each mixing. 6 silhouettes weaved through the air. Everything was perfect, flawless and flawless. The crystal mixer outlined a miraculous scene in the air. Chapter 290. Holding the flaming bar's hand, Ji-dong walked out of the Magic Bartender Guild with a faint smile on his face. His mood was as clear and sunny as the cloudless blue sky. The 18 arhats and 18 somersaults had conquered everyone in the Bartenders Guild. This was a unique technique invented by Ji-dong, and it was also the pinnacle of bartending in this world. Du Sikong had already admitted defeat before the 3rd round, because he knew that he would never be a match for Ji-dong even if he tried his best. When he brought the famous wine manual and a bottle of vast sea nectar to Ji-dong, he did not feel any regret or heartache. He told Ji-dong that it was the miracle Ji-dong had shown him a new direction for bartending. He would definitely record this competition and leave it to the future generations of the Bartenders Guild. He also believed that the value of this record of the competition between the 2 gods of wine would definitely not be lower than a bottle of vast sea nectar. He accepted his defeat wholeheartedly. Ji-dong declined Du Sikong's good intentions of sending them off, as well as the North Water Empire's invitation to a national banquet. At this moment, the Bartenders Guild's famous wine manual and a bottle of vast sea nectar were lying in Ji-dong's vermilion bird bracelet. However, the number of 1,000-year source of life in his vermilion bird bracelet had increased from 8 to 7. In the end, he still gave a bottle of source of life to Du Sikong as a gift, not because he was soft-hearted, but because of his respect for Du Sikong. Du Sikong's bartending skills had completely earned his respect. Ji-dong understood that if it were not for the huge breakthrough in his spiritual power, it would be hard to tell who would win today's competition. Whether it was 9 suns over the sky, 9 dragons frolicking with pearls, or 18 arhats 18 somersaults, they were all abilities that could only be displayed after the qualitative change in his spiritual power. Facing a god of wine who was on the same level as him, Ji-dong could completely understand Du Sikong's feelings. Therefore, he left a bottle of source of life for Du Sikong. Only a bartender of Du Sikong's level would not treat a famous wine like the source of life as a tonic. Seeing the smile on Ji-dong's face, the flaming bar smiled and said, "Ji-dong, what do you plan to do next?" Ji-dong said, "Let's return to the Middle Earth Empire. I suddenly remembered that I have to meet someone and pick someone up. After that, I won't return to the core of the world. I'll find a place to cultivate for a period of time, and after I've mastered what I've learned recently, I'll directly participate in the battle of the sage and evil." The flaming bar smiled and said, "All right, I'll listen to you. Bring Ah Jin with you to participate in the battle of the sage and evil. With Ah Jin's help, I'll be more at ease." Ji-dong looked at Ah Jin, and found that Ah Jin was also looking at him. Their gazes met, and Ah Jin seemed to be avoiding him. Ji-dong hurriedly retracted his gaze. He could already sense something from Ah Jin's unnatural behavior. When he looked at the flaming bar again, he found that the flaming bar was looking at him with a profound smile. He helplessly shook his head and said, "Let's go. To be honest, I'm really looking forward to the start of the battle of the sage and evil." Raising his head to look at the sky, Ji-dong couldn't help thinking back to what the heavenly secrets had said to him. Back then, he said that 7 years was about to arrive. Could it be that something would really happen in the battle of the sage and evil? Saint Disciple of the Twin Flames, ever since the birth of the heavenly stem Saint Disciple, you're the first Saint Disciple to have dual attribute. This undoubtedly means that you'll have a powerful future, but it also means that you'll have to face even greater challenges. Jidong, you'll be the leader of this generation of heavenly stem saint disciples, the saint ruler who controls the rise and fall of the world. A saint ruler born at the right time. All of your opportunities, even your birth, were caused by the will of the heavens. Your future path will be extremely difficult and bumpy, and you might even be surrounded by tragedy. However, you'll still be the saint ruler who watches over the world. Now is not the time to do anything. I've revealed the heavenly secrets at the cost of my vitality, but I hope that you'll be prepared. You still have 7 years. After 7 years, the world will be in chaos. I've used 20 years of my vitality in exchange for a sentence of guidance for you. You must remember that chaos awakens in the flaming bar, and God will bring endless sorrow. The moment of extreme pain is also the time to break out of the cocoon and be reborn. Illusion, reality, the soul struggles in the flaming bar, and is broken in the flaming bar for eternal life. When the flaming bar reappears in the world, the will of the heavens will change. Nothingness, illusion, emptiness, you can't see the endless future. I only hope that the ending is not a tragedy. Remember. Half a year later, at the coast of the East Sea, the Allied forces of the 5 countries stationed here had recently become lively again. A large number of troops were mobilized, the overall exercise, and the gradually somber atmosphere showed that the grand event that happened once every 5 years was about to begin. On the radiant 5 Elements continent, all the powerhouses' gazes were focused on the coast of the East Sea at this moment. Even though the time of peace had been too long, who would dare to relax in this kind of holy war? Fury had already brought the disciples of the Enyang Hall and the hundreds of elite students of the Heavenly STEM Academy to the military camp to make preparations. After the holy war ended, another batch of new students would replace the old students who had been stationed here for 5 years. This time, the Heavenly STEM Academy was completely led by Fury alone. He had replaced his teacher Zhu Rong as the director of the fire element in the Heavenly STEM Academy, and he was also in charge of 2 elements at the same time. Currently, Fury's status in the Heavenly STEM Academy was getting higher and higher. During this period of time, his magic power had increased again, reaching level 79. Level 79, coupled with his extreme Yang Thunder and Purple Thunder Heavenly Dragon, his strength was already one of the best in the Heavenly STEM Academy, especially among the students. Following the reconciliation between Yi Xin and Fury, the entire Enyang Hall was like an iron plate. Even the board of directors had to be wary of the Enyang Hall. Fury alone was not scary, but the board of directors clearly remembered the scene when the siblings, Yin Zhaoyang and Yin Zhaorong, came to the Central Plains city to ask for him. Jidong was their disciple, and so was Fury. Moreover, Fury was only in his early 30s, and it was almost certain that he would break through to the 9 crowns and become the next supreme powerhouse. However, at this moment, Fury was not in the military camp of the 5 great empires. Yi Xin was holding his arm, and the 2 of them were strolling on the beach, looking at the gloomy myriad lightning calamity world in the distance. From time to time, lightning flashed across Fury's eyes. Ultimate weapon Li Yonghao, this time's holy war will be the deciding moment between us. I won't give you any more chances. Fury shouted towards the direction of the sea. Yi Xin quietly stayed by Fury's side. After 5 years, she looked even more mature. She was like a ripe honey peach, charming and captivating. The current Fury was very different from before. He was no longer so obstinate and self-opinionated. He was more willing to listen to the opinions of others. His relationship with Yi Xin was more stable and warm. Being by his side, Yi Xin felt very at ease. No one knew better than her how hard Fury had trained and how terrifyingly strong he was. Holding Fury's big hand with both hands, Yi Xian smiled sweetly and said, "After this holy war, don't forget what you promised me." Fury's gaze turned to Yi Xian. His eyes, which were filled with domineering might, instantly became much gentler. He pulled her into his embrace and said, "How could I forget? This holy war should be the last one I'll participate in. Junior brother has already grown, and even I'm shocked by his strength. Next time, with him leading us, we'll still be the victors of the holy war. After this war, I'll also start a family. You've suffered following me all these years, and I've never brought you out to play like other people's boyfriends. After we get married, I'll definitely bring you around the entire continent to make it up to you." If anyone saw Fury now, they would definitely be so shocked that they couldn't close their mouth. Was this still the domineering Thunder Emperor? His gaze was so gentle, without the slightest trace of his usual domineering aura. "Actually, as long as I can be with you, it doesn't matter where I go. I'm not someone who can't stand loneliness. Even if it's the most ordinary life, I'll be satisfied. Fury, do you know that I'm really grateful to Jidong? I've always felt that he was the one who changed you and made you different from before. Now you're almost perfect in my eyes. I don't have too many extravagant requests. Being your wife is my biggest goal now." Fury smiled and said, "I'm satisfied with your words. Actually, as long as I can be with you, it doesn't matter where I go." Fury chuckled and said, "I'm the lucky one. Back then I was too foolish. However, speaking of little junior brother, this kid is truly a marvel. Compared to him, I'm not considered a genius at all. I wonder what surprises he'll bring me in the next 6 months. If I continue to lead the way for him, the holy demon battlefield will definitely be his in the future." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Looking at the time, he should be here soon. To be honest, I really find it hard to believe that he's able to catch up to you in just a few short years. In terms of geniuses, I'm afraid no one can compare to your little junior brother." As Yi Xian spoke to this point, she suddenly felt Fury's body move slightly. He pointed to the sky and laughed, "Haha, look, isn't that him?" Yi Xian looked in the direction where Fury was pointing and saw a thick cloud drifting over from afar. If one did not pay close attention, they would not be able to tell that it was different from other cloud. She asked doubtfully, "Are you saying that Jidong is in that cloud?" Fury smiled and nodded. "Others might not be able to tell, but how can he hide it from me? I'm the controller of lightning. That's the effect of little junior brother's sacred evolution fire dragon." As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved it in the air, causing a thunderous explosion. As expected, the cloud in the sky drifted down just like that, bringing with it an illusory aura. 2 completely different dragon roars echoed in the air, one deep and one clear. Jidong's clear voice rang out from the sky, "Senior brother, sister-in-law, I'm not late, am I?" The clouds dispersed, and the sacred evolution fire dragon's appearance was revealed. Fury could not help but be shocked when he saw it. It was different from the last time he saw it. The sacred evolution fire dragon before him had undergone a huge change. Its body had become much larger and thicker than before. Its body length had also increased to 15 meters. Even though it had restrained its aura, Fury and Yi Xian could still feel a strong pressure being released from its body. The scales on the black and white halves of its body emitted a faint layer of gold. Every scale became heavier and more dazzling, and the dragon's double-headed eyes shone with an almost tangible brilliance. Even Fury could not help but feel a little envious of the majestic and spirited appearance of the dragon. There were a total of 3 people on the sacred evolution fire dragon's back, 2 men and 1 woman. Jidong did not wait for the sacred evolution fire dragon to land before he flew down and arrived in front of Fury and Yi Xian. Of the other 2 people on the dragon's back, Fury had seen Jin, who wore golden armor and covered his entire body. However, it was his first time seeing the other person. However, the one who attracted Fury and Yi Xian's attention the most was still Ji Dong. It had only been half a year since they last saw each other, but Fury discovered that Ji Dong felt as if he had been reborn. As a possessor of ultimate magic, he had the most profound feeling. The junior brother in front of him exuded a feeling that he could see through everything. His gaze seemed to be clearer than before, and faintly, his body released an aura that he could not fathom. Fury shook his head helplessly. He smiled and said, "Junior brother, it looks like you've made a breakthrough again. Can you not be like this? Every time we meet, you have to give me a huge shock. My heart can't take it anymore." Ji Dong chuckled. "Senior brother, don't make fun of me. Although my cultivation has improved recently, how can I compare to you?" At that moment, the sacred evolution fire dragon had already landed. Its 9 dragon claws, which were different from the traditional 5 claws of the Huaxia dragon god, touched the ground at almost the same time. Its noble, dignified, and high dragon head and its arrogant aura caused Fury and Yi Xian's gazes to land on it again. "Junior brother, don't tell me that your sacred evolution fire dragon has already evolved?" Ji Dong chuckled. "It has evolved. Speaking of which, it can be considered a coincidence. In terms of strength, it is even stronger than me." Every time he saw the Huaxia dragon god in Maotai and Wuliangye, Ji Dong could not help but be filled with pride. Although they were different from the dragon head in Ji Dong's impression of it having 5 claws, the 2 heads and 9 claws were more noble. It could be said that this was a gift from the flaming bar. Chapter 291. At that moment, Ajin and the man that Fury had never seen before leaped down from the sacred evolution fire dragon's back. The sacred evolution fire dragon transformed into a ray of light and rushed towards Ji Dong. A thick halo of light instantly formed a black and white barrier around Ji Dong's body. In the next moment, the halo of light retracted and completely fused into Ji Dong's chest and disappeared. Over the past 6 months, the sacred evolution fire dragon had completed its evolution. However, the Eclipse Phoenix Horror was still in a deep slumber in the Vermilion Bird Bracelet. In order for her to evolve better, Ji Dong would purposely channel the Chaos Fire from the Pearl of Chaos to nourish the Vermilion Bird Bracelet every day and transfer the aura of chaos to her. In essence, Horror, like Maotai and Wuliangye, had suffered great damage before hatching. However, the difference was that Horror had been nourished by Ji Dong's mana and the Vermilion Bird's mana for many years. When it had just hatched, it was only at the 4th rank. However, the sacred evolution fire dragon was completely different. Although it had been soaked in the frost dragon's cold air, in order to hatch it and become Ji Dong's mount companion, the flaming bar could be said to have put in a lot of effort and used countless treasures and her own mana to successfully hatch the sacred evolution fire dragon. It could be said that its essence was much stronger than its original fire dragon's essence. The process of evolving from the 8th rank to the 9th rank was not only influenced by Ji Dong's Pearl of Chaos, but also by the explosive power contained in its body. Therefore, the evolution process was much faster. As for Horror, she had been absorbing a large amount of mana from the outside world through Ji Dong every day, but she still showed no signs of awakening. The flaming bar told Ji Dong that Horror's evolution would take a very long time. Even with the support of his mana, it would probably take a few years. After this evolution, Horror would most likely directly enter the 8th rank. This was because it was not only evolving in terms of mana, but also using the creativity of the Chaos mana to repair its innate deficiency. Even though this meant that Ji Dong would have one less helper in the battle of the holy and evil, he was still happy for Horror. With Horror's congenital deficiencies fixed, he would be able to answer to the Vermilion Bird. Fury patted Ji Dong's shoulder and smiled. "Ji Dong, I just told your sister-in-law that this will be my last battle. Now that I see that your sacred evolution fire dragon has evolved to rank 9, I can be at ease. I believe that even without me, you will definitely lead everyone to victory." Fury patted Ji-dong's shoulder and smiled. Ji-dong, I just told your sister-in-law that this will be my last battle. Ji-dong shook his head. Senior brother, how can I do that? Compared to you, I'm still far behind. Moreover, the people from the Heavenly STEM Academy will not listen to my commands in the future. You are still so young. Let me calculate, if we use the age of 50 as the limit, you can participate in at least 3 more battles of the holy and evil. Fury unhappily replied, You're right. This is already the 4th time I've participated in the Saint Evil battle. In the history of the Saint Evil battle, the number of times I've participated in it can be counted on. Even the final weapon Li Yonghao from the Darkness Continent, Li Yonghao, has participated 1 less than me. In the future, everything will be yours. After the Saint Evil battle ends, you and I will make a trip back to the academy. I want to see who dares to not listen to your commands. Brat, don't even think of running away this time around. It's time for you to take responsibility, and I can marry your sister-in-law. Your senior brother is already over 30 years old, but I still haven't married yet. Ji-dong was pleasantly surprised. Senior brother, you are going to marry sister-in-law? At that time, I must give you a big gift. Alright, after the battle of the holy and evil ends, no matter what, I will make a trip back to the Heavenly STEM Academy with you. However, I believe that there are many geniuses in the Heavenly STEM Academy. There will definitely be someone more suitable than me to replace you. Fury laughed and scolded. You brat, you just don't want to be bound by the academy. Do you think I don't know? Don't forget, how can I be at ease if I hand over the position of the top student of the Enyang Hall to someone else? Oh right, where is sister-in-law? Why didn't she come with you? I heard that sister-in-law's identity isn't ordinary. Ji-dong said, Senior brother, I won't hide it from you. The flaming bar has helped me the most. However, she can't use her ability easily. She is waiting for me at home. Maybe after the battle of the holy and evil ends, we can get married. Fury looked at Ji-dong and smiled. Alright, I'll be waiting for that day. Senior brother also believes that you'll be able to grasp this aspect. To be honest, sister-in-law is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. She's flawless. You're really lucky. Ouch, Yi Xian, why did you pinch me? Fury turned his head to look at Yi Xian, who had an unfriendly expression and hurriedly smiled. You are beautiful too. You are also flawless. In my heart, you are the most beautiful woman, okay? Yi Xian rolled her eyes at him, revealing an expression that said, That's more like it. Ji-dong smiled. Senior brother, sister-in-law, I've brought 2 people with me to participate in the battle of the holy and evil. Let me introduce you to them. At this moment, Jin and the man walked over. Ji-dong pointed at Jin and said, This is my friend, Jin. I don't know why, but she broke the limit of 2 people possessing the same type of ultimate demon power at the same time. Her demon power is Ultimate En Gold, level 68. Fury and Yi Xian looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. What did a level 68 Ultimate En Gold demon mean? She could easily face any challenge from a 7-crown demon, or even an 8-crown demon. In terms of overall strength, Fury had always thought that the Enyang school was completely above their opponent. However, the 10 Heavenly STEM's holy disciples of the Dark 5 Elements continent all possessed ultimate demon power, which really annoyed him. Furthermore, the Heavenly STEM's holy disciples that appeared last time were even worse. It was already good enough that they did not cause trouble. How could they not be happy when Ji-dong suddenly brought a level 68 Ultimate En Gold demon? Little junior brother, the surprises you bring me are like raging waves hitting the shore. Hello, Miss Jin. Jin did not speak. She only nodded at Fury and Yi Xian. She was even more difficult to approach in her armor. As for what was hidden behind this coldness, only she knew. What about this brother? Fury's gaze turned to the man next to Ji-dong. This was a young man who looked to be about the same age as Ji-dong. He seemed to be slightly older than Jidong. Unlike the coldness around Ajin, this person always had a smile on his face. He had a strange temperament like a floating immortal. Looking at him, Fury was surprised to find that he could not see through this person at all. He could not see how strong his demon power was, nor could he see what level his strength had reached. He could not even see his face clearly. It felt like this person was shrouded in a layer of mysterious fog. Jidong said, "Senior brother, you've heard of Tianji, right? This is the new generation of Tianji." After he inherited the position of Tianji, his name was also changed to Tianji. Before that, he was called Yun Tianji. We met 7 years ago. Not long ago, I went to Tianji City to see him. I also saw the dying old Tianji. Speaking of this, Jidong's expression became obviously solemn. After leaving Tianshui City, he took Flaming Bar and Ajin to Tianji City because he remembered the agreement between him and Yun Tianji. On the same day he found Yun Tianji, the old Tianji passed away. When he arrived, he happened to see the old Tianji's dying gaze. He could never forget the deep sorrow he saw in the old Tianji's eyes at that moment. Even now, when he thought about it, his heart still felt very heavy and uncomfortable. Hearing the two words, Tianji, Fury's expression changed slightly. Of course, he had heard of this existence that even the rulers of the 5 great empires respected. It was said that he was the only great prophet in the world. The words of Tianji had never been wrong. Everything that Tianji said was the truth. It was passed down from generation to generation. Regardless of whether the situation of the continent changed or not, Tianji City belonged to Tianji. It could be said that Tianji himself was a legend, a mysterious legend. At this moment, the new generation of Tianji was standing in front of him. How could he not be shocked? Yun Tianji smiled and said, "Hello, Thunder Emperor. This time, I came with my master. I hope that I can be of help to you. In the beginning, if it wasn't for my master saving me and avenging my family, I wouldn't be here today." Speaking of this, his expression suddenly became solemn. He said, "Thunder Emperor, you are the leader of the 5 elements continent participating in the battle of the saint and evil. Now, I have to tell you that this battle of the saint and evil is a battle of life and death for you and the entire 5 elements continent." There seemed to be a strange magic in Yun Tianji's voice. Hearing his words, Fury and Yi Xian felt their hearts sink. It was as if there was something pressing on their hearts. A battle of life and death? Fury looked at Yun Tianji in confusion. Yun Tianji nodded his head. His voice was full of a strange magic. He said, "My master exhausted his entire life and paid the price of dozens of years of his life, but he still couldn't figure out the source of this crisis. It wasn't until the moment before his death that he confirmed that this battle of the saint and evil is the source of the crisis. It concerns the life and death of our 5 elements continent." Yi Xian was stunned for a moment. "That's impossible. Fury has participated in the last 4 battles of the saint and evil, and I have also participated in 3 of them. We have had the upper hand in almost all of them. Although the other side has 2 heavenly stem saints who have risen up in recent times and are a threat, our overall strength is not weak either. Moreover, the saint and evil passage is not that easy to break through. During the battle of the saint and evil, our army will be guarding the exit of the passage. The experts of the continent will also focus their attention on this side. Even if they can tilt the saint and evil sky to their side, it is almost impossible for them to break through our defense. As long as we can hold on for a short period of time, then they will have to face the obstruction of the entire 5 elements continent. The time that the saint and evil passage can be opened is limited. I really can't think of any way that the 5 elements continent can cause a crisis of life and death for our continent." Whether it was Yi Xian or Fury or even Jidong, they all had doubts about Yun Tianji's words. Even though Jidong had personally heard what the previous Tianji said before his death, he still found it hard to believe. Just like what Yi Xian had said, the outcome of the battle of the saint and evil was more symbolic. Even if they lost, it was almost impossible for the other side to break through the saint and evil passage. This had been proven many times in the past hundreds of years. However, Ji Dong could never forget the sad expression in the eyes of the previous Tianji before his death. Whenever he thought of that gaze, he would feel very uncomfortable. Yun Tianji sighed and said, even with master's cultivation, he couldn't see it clearly. Let alone you guys, even I, as the successor of Tianji, can't believe the most important prediction in master's life. I really hope that master's prediction is wrong. However, the peaceful days have passed for too long. No matter what, we have to be very careful in this battle of the saint and evil. Of course, it would be good if everything is safe. If there is any change, we will be able to react as soon as possible. Ji Dong said, Old Tianji found Master more than a year ago. Master promised to personally guard the entrance of the saint and evil passage. With Master, Master's wife and the other Supreme Masters who are also in closed-door training, at least guarding the exit should not be a problem. We have to be as careful as possible in the battle of the saint and evil. 5 years have passed, the strength of the dark stem saints must have improved, but we have also improved. This time, our overall strength is also incomparable to the last time. Fury nodded and said, no matter what, it is impossible for them to break the rules of the battle of the saint and evil. Only devil masters below the age of 50 can enter the battlefield. Tianji, thank you for the news you brought, and thank your master for everything he has done for the future of the continent. However, we should believe in our own strength more, and we will try our best to control our own destiny. Yun Tianji didn't say anything else and just nodded silently. He suddenly thought of his sister who had passed away many years ago. Just like what the previous Tianji had said, some things were already destined and couldn't be changed. Fortunately, according to his teacher's predictions, no matter how great the crisis was, there would always be a chance of survival accompanying the light continent of the 5 elements. Furthermore, this chance of survival was always related to one person, the master he had acknowledged 7 years ago, the Saint Apostle of Light and Dual Flames, the Saint King of this generation of light and heavenly saints, Ji Dong. Fury laughed. Hyoheim said, let's go, junior brother. Follow me back to the camp. Last time, after the battle of the saint and evil, you secretly ran away. My brothers complained a lot. Since you are here, let's go and greet them first. Chapter 292. Under Fury's lead, everyone returned to the camp of the army. Without a doubt, the Yin-Yang school was in the center of the army. Before Fury could arrange a tent for Ji Dong and the other 2, the 6 glorious dragons, other than the stone dragon, Song Ruelong, who needed to stay in the middle of the army, had already rushed over. Actually, the 4 dragons did not have a deep impression of Ji Dong. However, after the battle of Holy and Evil, Fury had said that Ji Dong would definitely be his successor. Moreover, they had also heard about what Ji Dong had done in the previous battle. Naturally, they would pay more attention to this little junior of Fury. After the 2 sides exchanged greetings, Ji Dong told them about Tianji's warning for the second time. The 4 dragons also expressed that they would try to be cautious, but Ji Dong could see the disapproval in their eyes. He could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. To be honest, Tianji's vague prediction was something that even he himself could not believe, let alone convince others. Fortunately, the 6 Supremes, led by the Grandmaster, would definitely rush over after the holy and demonic passage opened. With their support, Ji Dong did not have much to worry about. The battle between the holy and demonic passage was about to begin, and the 4 dragons had many things to do. After issuing the invitation, they left one after another. Yun Tianji silently sat in the corner with his eyes closed. No one knew what he was thinking, and Ah Jin still had a cold expression. Ji Dong and Fury sent off the 4 dragons and returned to Fury's tent. Ji Dong asked, Senior brother, how many disciples does the Yin-Yang school have now? Fury replied, besides those who have died and those who have passed the age limit, there are still 50 people. Why, do you plan to return to the Yin-Yang school? Don't worry, after this battle, even if you don't want to return, I will definitely pull you back. Ji Dong shook his head and said, that's not what I meant. Can you call them over? I have something to give them. The battle between the holy and demonic passage is about to begin. It would be good to have something to save their lives. Fury looked at Hyoheim in surprise and said, what is it? I have a share too, right? Oh no, your sister-in-law and I want a double share. Ji Dong laughed and said, Senior brother, when did you become so greedy? Fury laughed and said, this isn't greed. Do you think I don't know you? Anything you can take out must be something good? Tell me, what is it? Ji Dong smiled and said, do you still remember the method I used against the evil magician of the Magic Guild? Fury was stunned for a moment before he said, oh right, I forgot to ask you the last time. How did you do it? I feel like you used something similar to a magic scroll, but we didn't see your scroll. Instead, there was the fragrance of wine in the air. Don't tell me you used wine to increase your mana. No, although it is it, Ji Dong said, it's not. Wine is flammable and is. Mags cans. Magic of the Dragon King is saint. As he spoke, he flipped his wrist and a bottle of magic wine appeared in his palm. He handed it to Fury. Fury took the magic wine, his eyes filled with surprise and said, is this it? What is it? Let me take a look. Oh, the bottom of the bottle seems to be the 5 elements formation. Junior brother, you. Ji Dong said, you can say it's my invention. Although it has some limitations, it's cheap to make. I call it magic skill wine. In a sense, it's comparable to magic skill scrolls. Unfortunately, I'm the only one who can make it. Senior brother, you also know how to use the 5 elements magic circle. I'll tell you the theory behind it and you can try it. Fury's eyes widened and said, you mean, this can be used as a magic scroll? My god, junior brother, what is the liquid in the bottle? Ji Dong chuckled and said, of course it's wine. Some have brandy, some have whiskey. How about this, gather everyone together and I'll give each of them one. I'll also explain to you how to use it. This thing is temporarily not enough for battle, but as long as it's used well at a critical moment, it's possible to save your life. Fury put away the magic wine in his hand and said, Junior brother, you really are a monster. I am starting to believe the words of the divine oracle more and more. Grandmaster said that the old divine oracle told him that you will be the holy king who will save the continent, the leader and guide of the holy disciples. It seems like he was right. I have always been conceited, but compared to you, I find that the gap between us is gradually narrowing. Junior brother, to make up for the trauma in my heart, can you give me another bottle of your source of life? Oh, and this magic wine too, the more the better. Ji Dong said unhappily, do you think this is plain water? I only have 100 bottles in total. There won't be much left after giving it to my companions in the Yin-Yang Hall. I will share some with you. To be honest, senior brother, this magic wine is not of much use to you. I can only imprint the basic skills in it. Even if it is a combination of 2 basic skills, it will only have the power of an ordinary ultimate skill. You have the Hell Thunder Divine Axe. Do you still care about this little bit of power? Fury laughed and said, that's not the same. Who hasn't exhausted their mana? You're right, this thing can save lives. You wait here, I'll go gather everyone now. Right, do you know any of the new juniors in the Yin-Yang Hall? Acquaintance? Ji Dong was stunned. Before he could ask, Fury had already rushed out. Looking at Fury's back, Ji Dong realized that the gap between him and senior brother had really narrowed. It was not just in terms of strength. When senior brother spoke to him, he was no longer full of concern like before. It was more like he was communicating with a partner that he could entrust his life to. This undoubtedly represented Fury's recognition of him. This was also the direction that Ji Dong had been working towards. Master, give me a few bottles of your magic wine. Yun Tianji opened his eyes and said to Hyoheim. Ji Dong said, Tianji, didn't we agree that you will stay in the camp and wait for me? In order to become the new generation of Tianji, you have already paid the price of not having the power of a demon master. How can I let you take the risk? Yun Tianji said, Master, have you forgotten? 7 years ago I said that Yun Tianji's life is yours. Moreover, although our Tianji lineage doesn't have the ability to fight, we are good at seeking fortune and avoiding calamity. We also have the ability to protect ourselves. With your magic wine, protecting ourselves in the holy evil battlefield shouldn't be a problem. I will definitely be able to find your position and meet up with you as soon as possible. Ji Dong said in a deep voice, No, I can't let you take the risk. The holy evil battlefield isn't a joke. The situation inside is ever-changing. Even if you have the ability to predict the future, it will still be dangerous. Yun Tianji said indifferently, Master, do you know what the last words teacher left me before he passed away? Ji Dong stared blankly for a moment. He couldn't help but think back to the scene before the death of the previous generation Tianji. After explaining everything to him, he seemed to have said something to Yun Tianji. Only his lips moved, but no sound came out. Ji Dong only saw that he should have said 8 words. Afterwards, the old Tianji looked at him with a sorrowful gaze before passing away. Teacher said, Follow the saint ruler closely, accompany him for a moment. Only I can understand what teacher meant at that time. He said that in the holy evil battlefield, I can only follow you closely. Only then will I be able to help you. This is also the safest way. Even if there are thousands of soldiers in this camp, it still won't work. Master, let me go. Seeing the stubbornness in Yun Tianji's eyes, Ji Dong's frown gradually relaxed. He said, All right, but you must be careful at all times. As he spoke, he took out 10 bottles of demonic wine and gave them to Yun Tianji. Then, he took off the core of life from his neck and hung it around Yun Tianji's neck. Master, you. Yun Tianji looked at Ji Dong in shock. Ji Dong smiled. I've already agreed to let you go, so you must listen to my arrangements. I've already used my soul strength to communicate with Mao Tai and Wuliangye. With them by your side, I can only be at ease. As for myself, I don't think you need to worry. Since I'm the saint ruler that the previous 2 generations of Tianji spoke of, it won't be that easy for anything to happen to me. Even if I run into a class 10 magical beast or a holy disciple, I can still escape unscathed. Although Yun Tianji was a Tianji, that didn't mean that he didn't have the emotions of a normal person. He didn't refuse and only nodded his head silently. Feeling the tremendous amount of life energy surging through the core of life, his heart felt even warmer than his body. At this moment, noisy footsteps could be heard from outside. Fury's voice also rang out at the same time, Junior, everyone's here. You can come out too. Ji Dong nodded to Yun Tianji and turned to walk out of the tent. Outside Fury's tent, dozens of Yin Yang Hall disciples were walking over from their respective tent. When he saw the unfamiliar faces from the Yin Yang Hall, his eyes suddenly widened in shock. Could it be them? The first person that caught his attention was a young man with short red hair and an extremely sturdy figure. He looked even taller and stronger than Fury. The clothes on his body seemed to be bursting open by his explosive muscles. His resolute face revealed the radiance of strength and confidence. Even without deliberately sensing it, one could feel that his entire body was as hot as the sun. The dense third fire magical power seemed to be ready to attack at any time. These weren't what attracted Ji Dong's attention. What truly attracted him was that somewhat familiar face and burning gaze. Are you Kar? Ji Dong strode forward and came in front of the young man who was nearly a head taller than him. The young man laughed and patted the slender, handsome young man next to him a few times. He said, See, I told you that the boss wouldn't forget us. Boss, isn't it me? As he spoke, he opened his arms to Hyoheim. Ji-dong also opened his arms and gave each other a big hug. He really didn't expect to see Kar in the Yin-Yang Hall sequence. After hugging Kar, Ji-dong's gaze immediately fell on the young man who Kar had patted on the shoulder before. Compared to Kar, this young man felt more dangerous. His feminine aura, handsome appearance, and intelligent eyes were all so familiar. "Bissot?" Bissot said with a painful face, "Boss, you caused me to lose a 4th grade 3rd fire crystal core to Kar. Shouldn't you pay for it?" The expression on his face seemed to be painful, but the joy in his eyes could not be concealed. "Don't talk nonsense." Ji-dong also gave him a big hug, and then opened his arms and pulled Kar over. For many years, since Ji-dong left the Heavenly STEM Academy, the three brothers had not reunited. Unexpectedly, they met again here today. "Ji-dong, when do you have time? Let's compare notes." A somewhat low female voice came from the side. When Ji-dong turned his head to look, he saw that strange and familiar girl with a slender figure was looking at him with a burning gaze. This girl had a delicate appearance, but cut very similar to Kar's short hair. She had a heroic spirit, and her height was similar to that of Bissot and Ji-dong. Among girls, she was definitely a rare tall person. "You are Zhu Gui?" Ji-dong had already recognized the girl. Compared to the past, the three in front of him and the companions he had known in distant Fire Academy had undergone tremendous changes. If it wasn't for the vague outline and the familiar look in their eyes, Ji-dong really wouldn't have dared to recognize them. Zhu Gui finally smiled and said, "How about it? When do you want to compare notes with me?" Ji-dong also smiled and said, "I still remember that when you were already a 5th-rank apprentice in the Fire Academy, the three of us were so envious. But now, I'm afraid you are no match for me." Zhu Gui snorted and said, "When you joined the Yin-Yang Hall, I knew I was no match for you. But that doesn't mean I can't compare notes with you. Now that I've also joined the Yin-Yang Hall, one day, I will definitely surpass you." Kar came up from the side and said with a smile, "Boss, little Gui is now your sister-in-law." Ji-dong looked at Kar in surprise and said, "Kar, you're not bad. You took care of Zhu Gui?" Kar hurriedly shook his head and said, No, I don't have that ability. It's Bissot." This time, Ji-dong was really shocked. Looking at the bashful Bissot, he shouted in his heart, "No way." Zhu Gui and Bissot belonged to the Yin-Yang Fire School, but the two of them could be said to have opposite attribute. Zhu Gui, who had such a strong personality, could be together with the somewhat feminine Bissot. This was really beyond his expectations. Bissot smiled bitterly and said, "Boss, you don't have to look at me like that, do you?